Hello, everybody, and welcome to Whimsically Wicked, a reading duet. My name is Haylee, and I am the whimsical half.
And my name is Darius, and I am the wicked half.
I'm kind of the wicked half on this one. I am forcing us to sit down for a little while.
Yep. Yep. Oh, we'll see if this one takes 3.5 hours like the last one.
Yeah, we'll find out. Today, this is our second episode of our Zodiac Academy recap series. We are doing the first half of book 2 because we learned our lesson last time. Book 1 took us like 3.5 hours to record.
I think it took us 4 hours to record, and it ended up being like a 3-something hour long.
Yeah.
It was a lot. It took a long time. My laptop died. It was a whole situation.
So moving forward, we're splitting these books up. We're going to see how long this takes. If you have not watched the first episode, I recommend you go back, give the recap a watch. We go over all of our characters, our board. But I will say we have made some additions to our board. We have, what's his name? Milton, I believe,
Yep,
in
Milton.
the book, who Darius has decided is Mike from Twilight.
Yeah. That was who was in my head. That's who it's going to be.
And who else we got? We only got 2 other characters who we will explain during the course of part 1 of Zodiac Academy number 2, Ruthless Fae.
A little thicker.
A little thicker. These books get thicker and thicker.
I think the font size is still not egregiously tiny, though.
No, that's good.
It's a normal font size still.
Okay. Quick note before we start this episode, there are some trigger warnings. Are there trigger warnings on Zodiac Academy's website?
I don't remember. I think the trigger warning on this is it's a bully romance.
Before we start this episode, we are just going to note that there are some trigger warnings for it. This is a bully romance. So think like bullying, abuse, domestic abuse, child abuse,
Age gap, romance.
power dynamics, degrading. Triggers to this for Zodiac Academy. And if you don't know the contents, if you have triggers, I probably wouldn't move forward. But if not, you're good to go. Let's do this. So we will start with just a brief little recap. The end of Zodiac Academy Book 1. The 4 celestial heirs, Darius, Caleb, Seth, and Max, they are our group of boys in the middle of our board here. They attempted to drive Tory and Darcy, who are at the top, the twins, out of Zodiac Academy, the school that they're attending. The 2 girls were living in Chicago. They were brought to Solaria as changelings, and they were basically told that they were heirs to a throne that their parents had sat on before mysteriously dying. The 4 celestial heirs, whose parents are currently holding the throne as the representatives for the 4 elements, we've got fire, air, water, and earth, they are determined to not let the Vega twins ascend their power and eventually take back the throne. Seth, the werewolf heir representative, he tricked Darcy. He flirted with her, he gained her trust, eventually made out with her and chopped all of her hair off, which was kind of a whole thing.
I thought she was bald at this point.
Yeah, she's bald now. Her blue hair kind of represented her, like, reminder to not trust anybody, and so this was very symbolic for her. We're not judging. We listen and we don't judge. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the heirs, led by Darius, found out her biggest fear of deep waters after this really traumatic event. They
Tory's greatest fear, yeah?
That is Tory's greatest fear, sorry. They forced her to jump into this really deep pool in the Lunar Leisure building. They trapped her under using some powers, like freezing over the ice. And Seth's air power, like, blew the cold wind, and she wasn't able to get out. Almost died. Professor Orion saves them. And eventually, after all of the detention is given out and everybody's mad, nobody actually gets in any real trouble.
No one gets expelled.
Never.
It's just like Hogwarts.
Yeah, nobody gets expelled.
You can do whatever you want. You're just gonna get detention. As in house points?
I don't even know if he took away health points.
Not house points.
And then as this is kind of unraveling, they hear a scream outside. They run and they find a charred body who Tory and Darcy discover as Professor Astrom, who was trying to help them discover a little bit more about their parents' mysterious death, and considered to keep them, and was trying to keep them safe. A card kind of flew out and hit them in the hand, and that is where we end book 1.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if it worked. We don't know if Tory and Darcy are leaving Solaria.
We don't know how traumatized they are.
We don't know how traumatized they are. And we're going to talk about this again. We're not judging Darcy for being upset about her hair. I get it. Hair's a big part of your life. But compared to Tory?
Oh, man. Like, they attempted to murder Tory, and then Darcy lost her hair, which I'm sure is very traumatizing. And if you're really attached to your hair, then that's difficult.
Yeah. But we live in a magic academy. I think it's...
But I'm pretty sure you can grow it back.
Yeah, it's potentially
I'm positive
possible.
you can grow it back at some point.
Just before we get going into book 2, spoilers, I guess?
Yeah.
We're doing a whole recap.
Also, the thing before was spoilers for all of book 1. So, if you've made it this far, you might as well stick around.
If you clicked on the video that said Zodiac Academy full recap of book number 2, I hope that you don't care at this point.
Yeah, that's on you, unfortunately.
All right, as we get in here is the dedication for book number 2. Note to all students. Vampire bites, loss of limbs, or getting lost in the Wailing Wood will not count as a valid excuse for being late to class. Chapter 1. We're going to start book 2 from Caleb's perspective, who we've never heard from before. And this is the night of, right after Tory and Darcy's very traumatizing night when they were trying to kick them out. Tory and Caleb kind of started to get close during book 1. They had that like steamy makeout session, and Caleb did try to get her to leave with him at the party before all of the events happened.
And she's Caleb's source.
Yes. However, when Tory was actually being sent to the pool and like to jump off of the diving board and stuff, he did absolutely nothing. So let's just remind ourselves who this person is. What I will remind us of what happened at the pool, though, is that Orion did allude to a vampire code when interrogating the heirs after the pool incident. He had said, "Have you been fucking with your source, Caleb? You know that goes against the vampire code, and I might just be in the mood to get your fangs ripped out." Caleb said, "I'm aware of the code. I didn't do anything to her." So, because Caleb declared Tory as his source, he's not allowed to fuck with her, and whatever that means.
That very technical term.
Yes. So, Caleb is walking back through the Wailing Wood after these events with Seth and Max. They're on either side of him. Darius is nowhere to be found. He stormed out of the pool, and that was pretty much it. We haven't heard from him. We're hearing his internal thoughts right now. He's really angry that Orion, who is the cardinal magic teacher, gave them detention for 2 weeks. He's kind of like, who does he think that he is giving us, the Celestial Heirs, detention for trying to
murder.
Kill a student?
How dare they?
How dare they? So, long story short, they feel pretty justified in their actions that they're taking to get rid of the Vega twins.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Caleb also gets distracted by some other thoughts about the way that Tory looked when she was leaving the pool, how low her heart rate got, and really like attempts to justify their actions. He's kind of leaving him self-questioning why he feels so bad right now.
Okay.
It's like, I don't get it. I don't get why I don't feel good after doing this. But he does note that his magic is quite drained. Part of him wishes that he had topped up on Tory's magic when they were at the dance. And the reason that he didn't is because he knew that they were planning something, but he doesn't specify that he knows what it was. So as his guilt is coming over him, he does reverse the blame back to Tory, and he's like, I tried to get her to leave, so this is her fault.
He was like, you could just not be here. And this could have not happened.
Yeah, he's doing some mental gymnastics, that's for sure.
He's trying his best.
So Caleb also notices that Seth is playing with something in his hand, which he quickly realizes is the black and blue hair that he took from Darcy. And Seth, who is a very touchy and feely werewolf, kind of moves over to bump Caleb because this is like his love language. He wants to be touched and all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
Seth can feel that something is wrong with Caleb. Caleb is not in the mood, and vampires are also generally quite a bit less touchy and feely.
Yep.
And so he's like, go away. And Seth pouts like a toddler about it. So Caleb continues to wonder where Darius is. He tries to sense him. He can't. So they're making their way to what we now know as King's Hollow. There's wards around King's Hollow, and the three guys all push past them. So it's this like big ancient oak tree that someone ancient had wielded powerful earth magic to make it their haven. Caleb describes it as it's the only place the four of them can escape the pressure that they're under and just be themselves. Only the most powerful Fae can enter this hollow, so it's kind of their own sanctuary at school. He starts to think about words that his mother told him about his relationship with the heirs. She told him, if you can love the other heirs like brothers, then your life will be all the easier for it. But either way, you are stuck together. Through the good and the bad, you are united. Your individual feelings do not matter when it comes to the actions of the group. You are one, and you must never show even the slightest form of weakness to the outside world. The actions of each of you are the actions of all of you. You stand together. If you falter, the whole Solaria will fall. So this gives us like some information on the maybe pressure that Caleb is under to make this work with the heirs and to create this united front that we know that they have.
Yeah, and like kind of the inklings of a backstory as to why they are the way they are.
Yeah. So he kind of starts to ponder the importance of this right now because the nymph attacks are on the rise. And we know that nymphs are creatures that cannot produce their own magic. They need to kill other fae and steal their magic in order to gain it. And that's kind of all we know about nymphs right now. And he also starts to think back to Tory and his kiss. He was really surprised and excited that he hadn't pushed him away. And he also kind of respects the twins for how they rise to challenges. But he also acknowledges, which I think we can all acknowledge, that these twins have absolutely no business leading Solaria at the moment.
No, they are not equipped to be rulers of an entire continent.
Yeah, and what we kind of know about this world is like Tory and Darcy agree with this, but this world gravitates towards power. And if Tory and Darcy have the most power, they will almost be forced to the throne in some way. And so the only option in the heir's mind is to get rid of them. So Seth and Max finally come in as Caleb is in King's Hollow already, and Seth shows off Darcy's hair that he has braided into a bracelet and placed around his wrist. Literally psychopathic behavior.
Do we think it's like a big chunky braid, or did he like take some strands and make it like a cute bracelet?
I've just like, I've pictured the two, like a black hair and a blue hair twisted together. And,
oh, that's a cute way to do it. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of all I pictured it as.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't specify if he like took all of her hair. Because like if my hair was at full length and you chopped it off, it is a lot.
The scrunchie. Maybe he made a scrunchie.
But like, if he just took some.
Yeah.
It could be, if he hadn't stolen it, cute bracelet.
Sure. That can be your opinion. But Seth and Max are pretty proud of themselves. They're definitely excited by the whole thing. They're pretty sure that the girls are going to drop out of Zodiac Academy, and Caleb is kind of more broody about it. He's not sharing the excitement of the boys. But he does kind of get this sense that Max is being pretty disingenuous about the whole situation. What Caleb knows about Max is that he's always fought against the image that sirens were sympathetic by nature. And he never wanted to admit that the fear and misery of others upset him when he fed on it, but Caleb knows that it does, because the heirs can't hide themselves from each other. They know everything about each other for the most part. And we kind of get some info on how Caleb at least sees Max. I think this whole chapter was just to get us to be sympathetic for
Yeah, I think it's to like try to start introducing them as actual characters now instead of just like an opposing force.
Yeah. So Caleb and Max do get into like a little fight. Max says that the girls should count themselves lucky that they're going to get out of here alive at all. And Caleb challenges him, asking if he'd be pleased if he killed her. Max does say that it would make it more easy, but Caleb is like, this ain't Max. And in a fit of rage, he launches himself across the room and he pins him against the wall and he's snarling at him. So they start fighting. Caleb gets the upper hand. He bites him and he starts sucking his blood, refilling his magic. And Caleb goes a little bit too far because he's really drained because he hasn't fed from Tory in a while. So while Max is like, hey, kind of get off me, they do hear a bang on the roof, and Darius comes in from the hatch at the top. So they ask him, like, hey, where the hell have you been, dude? And he was like, I need to fly. I was going to bite Orion's head off. And, like, he actually means this literally. Apparently, this is a trait of dragon shifters. They have huge anger issues.
Yeah, he's an angsty boy.
Yeah. And so the heirs are like, hey, did you maybe accidentally try or actually burn someone to death after when you were leaving? And he was like, haha, funny. And they were like, no. Actually, did you do that?
Someone was actually murdered via dragon fire, so...
Yeah. And they also... Seth tries to get close to Caleb again. He's, like, all sad, and he wants to comfort him. Seth kind of gives Sirius Black vibes, I'm not gonna lie.
Seth?
Mm-hmm.
He's also got the hair.
Yeah, he's, like, dopey, and he wants to, like...
He's just a fun-loving dude.
I just want to be close to you. And he's like, I don't like it when you're sad. And then Caleb's like, fuck off, yeah. So Darius is like, why is somebody burnt? And so Caleb is pissed about Darius leaving. Now there's a dead body. Max intervenes to say that Caleb is pissed, that Orion gave them all detention. Caleb does kind of seem to acknowledge that they probably deserve it for what they did, but he is still mad that Orion would dare dole out a punishment to the Celestial heirs. So now Max is super frustrated with Caleb for how he didn't actually help out with any of the preparation, and he starts to accuse him of hiding behind his vampire code. Caleb tells Max, well, if this is what it takes to keep our positions, then maybe I don't like being a part of. That statement he regrets immediately, because what we know about especially what his mother had told him, he knows that creates a divide within them and really hurts their trust. So now Darius is pissed. Mm-hmm. He has anger issues. So now his, like, eyes are turning to, like, golden reptilian slits, and his order is, like, kind of pushing its way out of his skin, and he's like, do you think I enjoyed doing that? Do you think I want to be terrorizing people and preying on their worst fears? You don't think I realize what that makes me? Who that makes me? So Caleb responds, how many times have we sat around this room and discussed all of the things that we don't like about the way our parents rule, and the first real test of our claim, we bow to their way of doing things? Darius is like, we don't have a choice, with his nymph attacks increasing and implies that they can smell weakness of the Vega twins and the political turmoil. He's like, we have to do this. And then Caleb responds with, like, the absolute worst possible thing you could say in this situation. And he says, I'm not saying we shouldn't get rid of them, but I am saying I don't think becoming your father is the way to do it. And so now Darius is lunging. Caleb bolts, and his vampire speed, he just gets away, and he doesn't even slow down till the edge of the forest.
Yeah, because no one wants to hear like they're just like their parents.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that.
I don't know anybody who would be like, yeah, it's a great compliment. At least not a lot of people.
Not a lot of people that hang out with us. So yeah, and we obviously, like, at this point know that Darius has daddy issues in some fashion. And that is our end of our Caleb perspective. We're gonna go back to Darcy. Mm-hmm. And the night before, they had come back to Darcy's room with Tory, and they woke up really early, so it's the next morning. And Darcy finally makes the decision to go and look in the mirror to see how bad it is. The front was longer. The back is unevenly cut, and there's almost a bald spot. So it's not looking so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tory kind of just says, like, hey, girl, it's gonna grow back.
Yeah. It's fine. Cut a cute A-line bob.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
Yeah, and once again, we're not comparing trauma again.
No.
But these were two very different levels of harm, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, go bald, buy a wig.
You got so many options available to you.
Yeah.
Rock it. Well, like, cut it a little bit. Even it out. But, like, that's a really good fuck you.
Yeah. So Tory and Darcy start discussing, like, what do we do now? They obviously want us gone. Should we give up? Should we leave Solaria? That is kind of where they're at right now. They're just like, you know what? Cut our losses. Let's go back to Chicago. And as they're kind of making that decision, Seth makes a Facebook post with the video of him chopping Darcy's hair off, and a threat to all students that if anybody is found helping her regrow her hair, they will be punished. Then another post from Principal Nova informing of a mandatory assembly in the morning, 8 to 9 a.m., to discuss the events. And if they don't go to this, they're going to lose like 150 precious house points. So everybody's going.
Honestly, forgot about the house point system.
Yep.
So quickly, and I only remembered it because I was like, Harry Potter.
Yeah. So they're like, first of all, we're not going to this stupid assembly. We were victims. And second of all, we're leaving Solaria. And they kind of make a plan. So they realize that they have an hour while everybody's at the assembly to figure out how to get back. Tory decides that she is going to steal some gold because they need something to get them by in Chicago. And who do we know that might have gold laying around?
Abundance.
In abundance, because their order requires it for replenishing their power. Dragon Daddy, Darius, a crux? Crux, okay. So she's gonna go steal gold from Darius's room, which sounds like a great idea. And Darcy's task is to go to Orion's office and get some of that stardust that he used to bring them back from Chicago. So we're gonna start with Tory. Tory is heading to Darius's room. Now this is Tory's bread and butter. She likes to steal stuff. This is like what she's always done. We
started with the motorcycle, like first chapter.
Yeah.
Book 1.
Yeah. So she's trying to convince herself, like, it's not going to be so bad going back to Chicago. Coercion alone is going to make them so powerful, right? Like, they're good to go. And to my understanding, there's no rules about magic usage in the mortal world.
No, I don't think they give a fuck.
No, it doesn't seem like they do. So they're already going to be super powerful. So they're going to be able to get by. And she rips back to her room. She changes. She grabs some hairpins, a bag, and heads to Darius's door. She does pick the lock. No problem. She goes into the room. It doesn't seem to have, like, any wards or protection, which I kind of find silly, but...
Darius is so full of himself, though.
True. He doesn't think anybody
who would dare?
Seriously, she would. So she kind of finds a very forward and suggestive group of letters. I guess a lot of women are fans of Darius, and they just send him naked pictures and letters. Very suggestive.
Do you think real world celebrities get letters and pictures? Because like social media is a thing. Like I would, in the weird world where I decided to send a naked photo of myself to a celebrity, it would be DM on Instagram.
I guess that would be true now. Like we're in 2025. When you said that, I immediately thought like people are mailing this in, but like probably not anymore.
Right? So like I wonder what it is that they're not just Facebooking him their nudes.
True.
Or like texting. I don't know. If like, all their numbers seem to be available to just.
It does seem that way.
Why letters? What are they doing to them?
Okay, can the atlas only maybe be found in the academy?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Ew.
Yeah. So she kind of notes his tidiness, like, and that the fireplace was on. But there were some signs that he had left in a rush. Like his pajamas were kind of filtered over like a chair, and bed wasn't made and all of that stuff. So she starts scooping up gold into the bag. The room is filled with gold. And she's kind of about to leave, but she just feels like he hasn't gotten enough karma yet. But she does note, remember those pajamas that I said were over the chair? They're pretty close to the fire. And she thinks that maybe accidentally if the room started on fire.
No big loss. They're also in the fire element, whatever.
Exactly. So she definitely slightly pushes the chair a little bit closer to the fire until it just, yeah,
Well,
blah, whatever. So she pushes the chair closer to the fire. She starts to feel the fire licking against her skin as it's like getting bigger and it's going all around her room. Um, but while that would normally burn you, it actually energizes and fuels her, which allows her to melt the gold, the metal, and the bedposts, and the fire doesn't touch her. So, like when she grabs metal across the room and in the bed and everything, it now just starts to melt. And I just want to pause because I have not read past what I'm sharing with you. I like spoilers for books ahead. I don't know. So I'm also going to be theorizing a little bit.
I will confirm nothing.
Okay. She does mention that the fire energizes her.
Mm-hmm.
And we know with the Fae, when they're looking for their orders, they're supposed to be noticing what kind of makes their power feel more full and energized and things like that. So I'm thinking that our order has something to do with fire.
Okay.
I don't know what yet. I know that her mom is a harpy and her dad is a hydra.
Yep.
So could be one of those. Hydra maybe would have fire associated with it. But my guess is that her order has something to do with being energized by fire.
Okay.
That's my guess. So she burns some metal, and she also actually notices a silver dagger that didn't melt in the fire. She grabs it, and she feels like it's trembling with raw energy. And she takes it and she leaves.
Forgot about this plotline.
Yeah, she kind of she kind of feels like it's almost speaking to her.
Yeah.
That it should be hers. So she ends up taking it as well, along with all this other gold. She's running back towards Air. She looks back and she sees that the flames have broken through the window, showing that it's all been destroyed. This chapter ends with Tory saying, "Everybody knows Karma's a bitch, and today her name was Tory Vega." I don't actually think she says that out loud.
That's an inside thought for sure. That should be an inside thought.
I like to think that she just like turned around.
Look
She's
at the
like,
camera.
"Everyone knows that Karma's a bitch. And today its name was Tory Vega."
Little fourth wall break. Oh my god. No, I really hope that's how it happened too.
Okay, and now it's for Darcy's mission. So Darcy's now running towards Jupiter Hall to Orion's office to steal the Stardust. She's also kind of having this internal debate with herself about it sucking that they have to back down, and that this is like giving the heirs what they want, but they have no other option, that they need to leave. So instead of picking Orion's lock, she kind of accidentally blows a wind breeze through the keyhole, and she was kind of trying to just like unlock it a little bit, but instead she just blows like a fist size hole through the door.
Nice.
Yeah, because what we know about Tory is that she's very good at this, and Darcy is always the clumsy one.
Yeah.
That is their dynamic. Oops. But she does the same thing to the locked drawers on his desk. So, like, she's destroying this office and all of his belongings while he's doing it. So right as she's finding the Stardust, she finds it in the desk. She hears Orion coming down the hall and steps into the room. And he kind of, like, starts to come to consciousness about, like, wait, what is happening here? And Darcy is just standing there. So she's realizing, like, oh shit, I'm in trouble, but she has Stardust, so she tosses it in the air, and she really thinks about the air tower, and so she's, like, swirling, and the office was fading away, and as she's doing that, Orion grabs her wrist, and they transport it together to the top of the air tower. This kind of reminds me of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, when, like, Dobby was apparating out, and Bellatrix just snuck her knife in there. The difference is, Orion just grabbed her wrists and came with her, and the other one was really sad. But
Having read if you've watched the last episode of this podcast, like a billion Harry Potter fanfics, and then listening to this, my brain just keeps drawing more and more parallels.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is necessarily their fault. I feel like Harry Potter is like the blueprint for this kind of thing now.
Yes, 100% it is.
It's just really entertaining to me because I'm like, we know not to talk to the things that talk to us that don't have brains.
Yes.
But we still do it anyway.
We still do it anyways.
Yeah. And they would have grown up in a world that had Harry Potter.
That's actually a good point, because I think that the reason that this is, like, so predictable in a manner, or obvious, I guess, is probably because it's a blueprint from...
Yeah.
It's just a smuttier and more chaotic and unhinged version of Harry Potter.
For adults.
For adults.
For
Definitely
adults.
for adults. As they get to the top of the air tower, she, like, fights him off in a wave of panic, and a force leaves Darcy's body, and Orion flew back. So she, like, pushed him in this, like, air, and he flies back. So she starts running towards the air building, and flies herself down the stairs in the building to try to get to Tory. So he comes in, he closes the door, and he throws her up against the wall. And I think an important note to make here is that whenever Darcy and Orion are having these little fights, he, like, does all these really terrible things, but the author really makes a point to put these little comments of amusement, like amusement, a twinkle in his eye, while he's doing these terrible things. So we know that there's, like, some tension between the two of them. And if you don't remember, Orion is a professor and Darcy is a student. So. Yeah.
And that's the one rule.
Yeah.
Don't fuck the teachers.
Don't fuck the teachers. That is the only rule that seems to be
university.
able to get you in trouble. In a university.
Where I think is where you could justifiably fuck the teacher, personally.
Yeah. So Orion says to her, "I thought that you and your sister were made out of tougher stuff." And he challenges her to confront the situation, and knows that it's striking a chord for Darcy. Like, she doesn't like to back down, and he knows that. He also takes away the Stardust, saying that she can leave, but not with that, because it's expensive and it takes Dragonfire to make. And so that's not gonna work for Orion. He says, nope, go for it, but I don't care. I don't care how you leave, you're not leaving with this. So he also says, say it out loud, that you can give your place up at Zodiac Academy, and that they're not strong enough to stay, and that they're not Fae. And the last one, that you're not Fae, really gets to her. So she snarls back and says that she is Fae. And he is like, Fae fight for their place in the world, Blue. They don't ever bow out of a fight. If the heirs have beaten you, then you are not one of us, and you never were. So she immediately decides, I refuse to not be Fae. She tells Orion that she is Fae, and he tells her to prove it. So she goes back to find Tory in her room, and Darcy immediately says she thinks that they should stay. Tory seems to agree with her, but she also tells her what she did to Darius's room. And they just both burst out laughing. She's like, okay, great. Would have been great information to have about an hour ago.
Yeah.
But they're both laughing, and she ends up showing Darcy the dagger, and Darcy immediately is pulled towards it. They both kind of acknowledge that there's something weird about it. And then they start brainstorming ways to get back at the heirs that are more clever, because they don't have as much magic training right now. So they have to, like, make a plan to, like, be really clever about their comebacks, because they can't outpower them. And then they also made a backup plan if they ever do need to escape. And that's pretty much it. They want to hide the gold somewhere, so that, like, if they do ever decide, like, we need an escape plan, we'll go get the gold and we can
peace out.
So they do decide to leave it at Darcy's room. So Tory leaves to go back to House Ignis now, and Darcy receives an email from someone named Lance with a library location. She says, hey, who is Lance? I don't know Lance. And he says, I think you know me better as the bourbon-drinking professor with a permanent scowl stamped on his face and a general air of failed dreams about him. Check out the book Blue. You'll find it educational. P.S. Delete these messages immediately. And we learn that O'Brien's first name is Lance.
Yep.
And he is texting her.
Step 1.
Step 1. Okay, we're going to go back to Tory, who is now headed to back to her house, Ignis. But she does start to notice dark clouds in the sky, the wind's blowing, and she starts to blend into the crowd coming back from the assembly so that she can make it look like she was also coming from the assembly. She sees Sophia and meets up with her, and Tory was kind of worried about her smelling like smoke, but now the rain is pouring, her smell is washing away, and she no longer smells like smoke, so it's fine. So they make it to House Ignis, and they hear screaming from the inside. The common room is filled with smoke, and Marguerite is screaming that there's a fire coming from Darius's room. Milton Hubert, Mike, lovely, elbows Tory, and when Darius gets to his room, he controls the fire using his water magic, and Marguerite tries to pull Tory up to the front to use her magic to help Darius out. Marguerite's like, hey, you are powerful and you have water magic. Can you help him? And she's like, I don't think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that seems like not the strat.
So Marguerite says, help him, you bitch, and lunges at Tory, who smacks her in the face with ice cold water, and pretty much says something to the effect, he kind of almost drowned me yesterday. I'm not going to help him.
Also, the last thing I would use to help him is water.
Why would I do that?
That seems so dumb.
Screw you. So Professor Pyro and Principal Nova, they come through as Darius manages to douse the flames, making everything soaking wet and burnt to a crisp. She knows that his clothes burnt and his tattoos were showing. First of all, interesting that Darius's clothes burnt, considering the fire didn't even go close to Tory.
Mm-hmm.
First of all. Second of all, Tory also recognizes the dark red symbol that is on his forearm. That is the sign for a Libra. And kind of wondered why he had someone else's sign on his skin. Darius is a Leo. So why would he have a Libra on his skin? We don't know. Pyro and Nova start to ask questions about what happened. They speculated on being a second attempt since the death last night was also from a fire. Obviously, no one would attempt to burn a fire-breathing dragon, Nova says. Because that sounds stupid.
Yeah, that seems
what?
Not how you kill a dragon.
You're saying that somebody killed Professor Astrom by burning him and then was like, oh, I'll do the same thing to Darius. So she's like, no, this wasn't a double murder. It's more likely that they were covering up evidence. So Darius intimidatingly made a comment to Principal Nova, and he says, I hope you're not making an accusation against me, Principal. And she was like, I'm not saying anything. It's the FIB who will be getting to the bottom of it. So Darius starts to get mad and declines Nova's offer to help for a place to sleep because he does already have a place to go. And he just needs to get his gold because he has none left and he can't...
do the magic.
He can't do any magic. So when he realizes that all of the gold in his apartment was completely melted, he completely lost control. He turned into a dragon. He is fire breathing in the sky.
He's a little pissed. Although,
those are the anger issues.
How do you wouldn't it still be gold?
I don't know.
How do you make gold cease to can you burn gold?
Yeah, can you look that up? Now, Darius also loses house points for the uncontrolled fire and losing control of his order because apparently that's a no-no at the school. And so Nova sees Tory, and she says she's glad to see her up and about, but that her and Darcy are going to lose their 150 points for their respective houses for not showing up to the assembly.
You cannot burn gold. If anything, you just purify it further.
Well, I figured it was special magic.
Yeah, she must have done something impressive.
Oh my god, I thought you were Googling something else and now I'm realizing it was so stupid.
No, like I was trying to see like because like certain things you can get to a point where like they kind of shrink down or like exist.
I was about to get you to Google, like,
Oh.
if there was a type of magical fire that could burn gold, realizing that we don't live in a world with magical fire.
Oh my god. I thought I was the one who wasn't living in reality anymore. Oh my god. That's good.
um, so, okay, I want to talk about, like, you automatically, you realize that Tory wasn't at the assembly. You just docked her 150 points for not being at the assembly. And now she's there.
Yeah.
She just got traumatized by Darius. Nobody thinks that she did this. I feel like it's obvious.
I wonder if they're just underestimating her too much.
I think that's the only explanation.
Yeah, they have to think that she's like too weak to have actually like burnt or melted or whatever the fuck she did to the gold.
Every student was at the assembly except for those two.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just so...
Because they technically could have killed that other professor too, I guess.
Yeah. Craziness. Next morning, Tory is kind of feeling like, I don't feel guilty at all for this. I actually feel really good about it.
As you
and
should.
she's kind of like abiding by the rest of the attitude of this culture. She's starting to be like, hey, I don't really care what I just did to them. Power wins, and that's how y'all are going to treat me. I will treat you the same way. So she does start to play with some of the gold. Most of it is still with Darcy at House Air, though. And she kept the dagger. So her finger, like, brushes against it. And she once again feels that sensation as though its presence was responding to her and urging her to take it. So she does. And while she has that dagger, her horoscope pops up and she decides to read it. Darcy is convinced that, like, paying attention to these things would help them avoid bad things happening to them because these horoscopes
They do pan out.
So it basically says that she's going in a positive direction, but it's going to take hard work and determination to not trust and change so easily. It also says that she's going to have a collision with a Taurus, but it might be better than she thinks. And we do know, apparently, Tory knows that Caleb Altair is a Taurus.
Yeah, I don't know if they have the chapter art on the ebook, but like in the book for the chapter, like your star sign is the image beside you.
It does not have that in.
Okay, if it's just you gotta be somebody else real quick here.
Yeah. But I also don't know any of the star signs, so that doesn't help me.
Well, it's like, here we go, Caleb.
Oh, yeah, okay. I got you. So it does tell you in there.
Yeah, you as the reader might know.
So Caleb Altair is a Taurus. Tory knows this fact. So she goes to the Facebook feed to look at all the things that are being said about Darcy, and really it's just like public cringe post, whether like Darius and Marguerite have broken up. She says that they're just on a break. Like, it's just Facebook drama from when we all first got Facebook in middle grade, and it was bad.
I spent a whole year, because you know how Facebook does like the memories thing?
Yeah,
a whole year, every single day I'd check the memories thing, and then I would delete whatever posts I didn't like from that anymore. And I did that for 365 straight days.
Mortifying.
It was bad.
Mortifying.
And, like, part of it too was that I was with my ex for almost 10 years, and that was 10 years of, not all of it, but like a lot of years of Facebook. And I wasn't scrolling down that far to find it to delete it, so I just waited. That was the main reason for going through it once a day for a year, was to remove all mention of my ex-boyfriend.
Facebook got popular at the worst time. Worst age for me. I was like 11 or 12. And so we were all just like cringy early teens trying to figure out how to be a human while also, like,
being able to put them on the internet for anyone to see. And the worst part too is they've changed the way it was, because it used to be like Daria is or whatever was like the prompt in.
Yes.
But now it's gone. So if you go back 15 years of Facebook, it's the weirdest statements ever because the first like 3 words are missing. That's the things I learned in the year I obsessed over purging my ex from it.
I hate it so much. We can never talk about that again. So that's basically what's on Facebook right now. For the most part, though, there is a lot of sympathy from the rest of the school, and she notes that Darius didn't only look furious about his room as she's, like, looking back. He also looked, like, genuinely upset, and that kind of makes her feel pretty good. So she continues. A knock does come at the door, and Tory goes to answer it. But as she opens it, she realizes that she hadn't hid the dagger. It's, like, just sitting on the bed. And remember her horoscope, like, 3 seconds ago? How she was going to run into a Taurus?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's Caleb at the door. So she didn't really have any time to prepare for that interaction, but it's here. So turns out to be Caleb. She goes to slam the door in his face, and he jams his foot in the doorway, but that does give Tory a moment to sit down on the dagger while Caleb asks if he can come in. And then he does before she gives him any response. He casts a silencing bubble in the room so that they can talk in private, and he kind of shares, like, hey, you probably don't know much about the vampire code that I've had. So we do get a little bit more lore about this. Different orders of the Fae all have their own governing bodies to guide the actions of their members while under the influence of their order form. It seems to be how they, like, kind of keep all of the orders getting along in some fashion. Like, I mean, trying to govern that many different orders and types of magic would be really challenging.
Because, like, you got a Nemean lion and a Tiberian rat, and those things don't go together.
Yeah. So those orders, they kind of all, like, have rules associated with them. It's really easier to maintain control by having individual factions. And so as Caleb's source, he's like, hey, I think you should know more about this. And then Tory kind of immediately cuts him off and is like, hey, you actually kind of almost killed me the other night, so I don't really care what you have to say. So maybe, unless your next form of punishment is to bore me to death, leave. And eventually, like, he doesn't. So she's like, fine, I will. She flips the duvet over the dagger and starts to leave. But Caleb shoots towards her and he pins her against the wall. Lots of pinning against the wall in this book. He says he wants her to know that he had nothing to do with what happened to her, that he only knew that they were planning something, but he didn't know what, and that he had tried to get her out of there, hoping that it would count for something. And I don't believe that it does, in my opinion.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah. So he says basically he has a duty to protect Tory from harm, and Caleb has sworn an oath, which means that he can't torture or torment her. He also says that, like, they wouldn't have killed you, I promise. But she also mentions that, like, he kind of seems hesitant about this, like he's not really sure of the fact. Which I feel like they would have.
Yeah, I feel like they were about 10 seconds away from achieving that.
Max seemed like that would have been
the preferred outcome.
Idea. Max mostly. Caleb basically, says, like, I don't feel good about what happened. I told her that she broke through the ice when it was just Max that was controlling it. So, like, Caleb is basically telling her, hey, when Max was the one controlling the water and putting you in ice, you broke through that. Like, you fought back. But then Darius had to step in to help. Like, she was overpowering almost 2 of them, which is crazy because they're some of the most powerful Fae here. So he was like, I'm actually kind of impressed with this girl. And every single time he tries to talk to her, she steps in and she's like, that's not the way that this works. Like, you not directly torturing me
is still not torturing me.
Right? So she also says she knows that they're stronger than the heirs and can't wait to be trained, which Caleb smirks at and says, hey, I'm looking forward to that. Because it's going to be a fight. And Tory is like, hey, why can't you just accept that we don't want this throne? And Caleb is like, yeah, you say that now. First of all, it's never seemed to be an option. But he's also like, once you have all that power, it's too much of a wild card, too much of a risk to let you get that powerful.
You know what? Valid criticism of the just let us get to our money part of
Yeah.
it, where like they could realize they're like, hey, we could probably do this.
Yeah.
And then smush them like bugs.
Exactly. And he kind of like further explains to Tory, like, power is what matters here. If we let you rise to the top, if we let you prove that you're more powerful than us, that looks bad on us. We lose the trust. And once again, with this political structure, we are talking about Tory and Darcy, who have never lived in Solaria. Her parents just ruled for like some unknown reason. It was just a king. And now we have this governing body that has a representative from each element of the world. Like, it just seems like a better structure, minus the people who are running it are assholes.
Yeah. Potentially run an election instead of having to fight to the death for it.
Crazy concept, but anyways. We do switch back to Darcy, and remember Darcy just received that text from Lance giving her some information on finding some hair stuff to grow it back. So she does wake up before everyone else tomorrow, or the next day, and she's like considerably happier that her and Tory decided to stay. So she ends up heading through the Wailing Wood, which... Stop going through the sketchy forest.
Every time they step into it's called the Wailing Wood.
Nobody's up.
It's the Forbidden Forest.
It's basically the middle of the night. It's dark out still. It's like 3, 4 a.m. And you keep going into the Wailing Wood where you get followed and bullied every single time.
Every time.
Anyways, she heads to the Venus Library that Orion, we now know whose first name is Lance, told her she had to go and find the book for her hair. She does start to think about Astrum, because the last time that she saw Astrum was in the library, and we kind of start to remember that there's like an actual plot to this story.
Yeah, there's something happening here, other than their drama.
And that Astrum like must have known something important to be killed when it was discovered that he was the falling star. So it kind of leads to a lot of questions, because we also know that he was like... the only people we know that he was referred to as the falling star was Tory and Darcy. So, like, who else knows who this person is? We don't know anything. So she eventually finds the book, and it's called Earth, the Power of Growth. And inside of it, it had instructions for regrowth of her hair. It's like a potion. She kind of expected a spell, but it's a potion. And now we're going into a subplot for her regrowth of her hair that will matter. So the recipe is 3 items. She's got 3 flakes of dried pepper bark, 8 scrapings of mother of pearl, and a 2-inch yellow crystal. Things are very specific in this world. The instructions were mix together and leave in the light of the moon for 2 nights. Then wait till it turns transparent in the rising sun on the 2nd day. 2nd day of what? We don't know. Face the North Star and drink 50 milliliters per inch of desired hair growth.
Wow.
Very specific. As she's jotting down the instructions, she kind of sees another book that catches her eye. It's Earth, the Power of Summoning. And she quickly reads it, and there's like a few different things, but one of them that she notices is fleas. Like you could summon fleas, and she thinks it would be a really good way to get back at Seth while he's a wolf. So she jots down something called Aquarius Moonstone, that could call werewolf lice under the control of the spellcaster, and she wants to do that. They're getting clever. Darcy leaves the library. People are staring at her bald spot, and she like kind of tries to stay strong and keep her head up, you know? It's been really tough for her. I'm so mean.
I can't. Oh, poor Darcy.
She finds Sophia and Diego. They tell her they're happy the twins are staying, and Caleb comes their way with some of his friends. They point out Darcy, so he makes a comment about smelling orderless Fae. Apparently it's a dig at the fact that the twins don't know their order yet. And as though Tory's been there the whole time, I have no idea where she came from. I've read this like 15 times. Tory just like pops up. And without any indication that like she entered the scene or anything, and she's like, "Is it raining assholes?" to Caleb and his friends. Sophia points out that she has an order, and Caleb tells her not to go around reminding people because being a Pegasus is worse than not having an order at all. The poor Pegasuses. Sophia's up there, yeah, but she's also a Pegasus.
I'm aware this is a unicorn, just pretend it has wings.
Yeah. We thought it was funnier because that's Tyler, and Tyler's silly. So as they're walking away, they do make a plan to spread a rumor that Caleb likes Pegasus ass. And now Kylie is here. Now, if you don't remember Kylie is right there. She is currently Seth's girlfriend. And she was the
Does Seth know that?
Seth is apparently polyamorous from the
okay, I remember that. Yeah, okay.
That's what he told Kylie.
For the first
and
time.
We don't really... Well, okay, so at the end of the last book, she was videoing Seth doing it. So she was in on it the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't think Seth cares about her.
No. Seth cares about 3 dudes, and that's it.
Yeah, so Kylie appears. She comes into the room with streams of angry snakes around her head, and her skin is shifting into a pale green color, and her teeth are sharpened. The black and green vipers around her head spit venom at the twins. We find out that Kylie is a Medusa. Orion now comes again, and it's always like while shit's going down, Orion like always just has to walk in. He gets mad at Kylie, and he removes 20 points from Air for losing control of her order form. They really don't like it when you do that.
Yeah, there's the whole thing around that.
Yeah. It's happening a lot with the Vega twins here.
Yeah.
Really work everybody up. And now we're back into a Cardinal Magic Orion class. So
what's his quote of the day?
Yeah, on the board, his quote of the day in capital letters: "You are not pure." He announces that they're going to be discussing bloodlines today.
Oh.
And he points to a screen list, containing a list of orders. We've got Hydra, Kraken, Phoenix, Aryan Dolphin, Empusa, Ophiotaurus. Phoenix is my other guess for Tory's order.
Mm-hmm.
So Darcy immediately recognizes the first one, Hydra, as her father, the Savage King's order. Orion is asking what these 6 orders all have in common. Sophia declares that they're all extinct, gaining her 5 points for House Ignis.
Ooh.
And we learn that impure bloodlines are the reason that they are extinct, and that Hydra is the most recent one, the last Hydra ever existing being the Savage King. Due to King Vega marrying outside of his order, his bloodline was mixed with that of a harpy and whatever other genetics the queens had carried. So, because the Vega twins have not emerged in their order forms, there is a possibility that the Hydra order could rise once again. But it's like genetics, the stars they're linked to, and so on. So it's really difficult for them to predict what an order is.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Hydra, for example, mating with somebody who is not a Hydra and has a bunch of other bloodlines reduces the potential of a Hydra being born. And it seems that they are also rarer because they're more powerful. The more genetics that are introduced to a bloodline, the less likely they are to birth the offspring of the same order. So that explains why some families aim to keep their bloodlines pure, the dragons being one of them, and they often implement arranged marriages. So last book, Darius was talking about his arranged marriage to his potential cousin.
Yeah.
It's not a good fantasy novel without incest.
So much incest.
So much incest.
I'm trying to think of one that doesn't have it that's really popular, but they all do in some way, shape, or form.
When you cut this episode, we're just going to have episodes of us talking about incest.
This is the 3rd or 4th one where incest has come up.
It's too much. So right as this happens, Orion is talking about the dragons bloodlines, a beep comes from his atlas, and he reads it and immediately informs the class that the FIB has determined that Professor Astrom's death was caused by a nymph. And once again, we are reminded that there is a plot to this godforsaken book. So, he informs the class that this nymph had used their newly acquired element of fire, which they had stolen from Astrum in attempt to destroy the body. He didn't do a good enough job at concealing the evidence, and interviews are going to be conducted with anyone who might have witnessed it. He warns them about withholding any information. And now, this whole class switches to a lesson on nymphs. So now we get this really aggressive lore drop about nymphs, and it's early. Usually they don't get this till their junior year, but because of the nymph attacks, they're learning it now. So here we go. Nymphs are creatures born without natural magic gifts. They can acquire them from the Fae, but they are the Fae's sworn enemy, and their nature is one of destruction and death. They look like a creepy tall figure with long sharpened fingers. They described it as like sort of tree-like, and its body like sinewy and brown. And its face was like this demonic thing with red eyes and curling horns seemingly made from bark, which like twisted above its head. It's a weird looking thing.
You know what? I can picture it really well though.
Yeah, it is like kind of a weirdly specific...
Yeah, like I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Nymphs are able to overwhelm Fae within less than 30 seconds at close range, very specific time period. And the process is described as like a draining and sucking feeling that pulls at the well of magic inside of you and immobilizes it. This is also accompanied by a rattling noise, and Darcy immediately panics. She remembers this from the alleyway right before Geraldine got attacked, likely by the same thing. The nymphs originate from the Shadow Realm, which is another mirror world where dark magic originates. Apparently also where the fifth element lives, which according to Orion, though, doesn't exist. Tyler was like, isn't that where the fifth element is, in the Shadow Realm? And Orion was like, that doesn't exist, which means it totally exists.
Yeah, it's totally a
thing. Nymphs are also born of dark magic, but they cannot wield it unless they steal magic, using their elongated fingers to insert into the heart of a Fae that extracts the magic. It takes exactly 2 minutes.
You know what it sounds like now that I'm picturing it? It sounds like an ant.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. For Lord of the Rings, for anyone who didn't know what that was.
Yeah, it does.
It sounds like an ant.
Yeah, it is. Kind of, yeah, it's exactly like that. And once the Fae is dead, the nymph has their full power. In order to defend them, Orion tells them to run because they're idiots, and they don't really have any, like, combat skills. So he's like, don't even try.
You know what? Good advice.
Yeah, and also, they're fucking chameleons. They can look like the Fae.
Forgot about that part.
I don't, like, such a weird mix of powers, but they've got it. I will also say, like, this nymph description, I know that probably took me, like, 2 minutes. It's, like, 4 pages long.
It was a lot in the book. I remember that.
They really use their classrooms to do major lore drops. So, this is when that hot lady that Orion was at the bar in book 1, when they were all out, right before the nymph attack, that hot lady walks into the classroom. Turns out she is FIB.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they ask to speak with the Vega twins, with new evidence coming to light. As Darcy is walking out, Orion lets her know that she has detention with him on Saturday because of the Stardust situation.
Does he call it that?
No. No, I call it the Stardust situation.
Okay.
Yeah. But she's got detention on Saturday. We learn that the hot FIB agent is named Francesca. She's saucy and rude, and she tells Tory and Darcy that they're getting interviewed, and Darcy runs into Seth, and she sees his bracelet of her hair, and that just leads to a bunch of bickering, and Seth asked, have I broken you yet? After stealing her hair and making it into a bracelet.
And making her kind of
Like, and okay, if these were like 13, 14-year-olds, yes, absolute end of the world. These are adults.
Yeah, like it should...
Anyways.
And also, like, not adults that came from places where humiliation and degradation was not, like, an everyday occurrence. These are
Right.
foster care kids.
I know. They're used to this. So she looks to Seth and she's like, "You didn't break me. You forged me."
I forgot about that line.
And that was said out loud.
And directly to the camera.
Yeah, okay, back to the plot. Francesca is interviewing Tory and or Darcy. And she like basically asks one of them to volunteer. And so Tory's like, "I'll do it." And Francesca was like, "Perfect. Darcy's doing it." And she walks over and she puts her palm on Darcy's forehead, causing her mind to become like fuzzy, and eventually everything goes completely dark. So, fun fact, Francesca is a Cyclops. And she can just go into your head and take whatever she wants. So she saw everything from that night. And basically, they're cleared of suspicion. Tyler also comes by. Tyler is our unicorn, aka Pegasus. And tells Darcy that Orion actually can't make their liaison session tonight. And also that he took a picture of her unconscious and posted it all over Facebook. So, little FYIs there. We're going to go to chapter 7. This is a fun one. This is Darius's chapter in the first half of this book.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So we're kind of like continuing to get this behind the scenes look at what is going on with these heirs and who are they actually and what is the backstory. So Darius is flying in his dragon form, and he goes to a roof where he meets Lance. Darius refers to Professor Orion as Lance.
Mm-hmm.
We know that in book 1, they were kind of like sneaking off and having conversations.
Yeah, liaisons.
But we don't know much about their relationship. It's always been like a big question mark. He starts to think that he has decided to let this detention thing drop and not be mad at Orion for it, because they both knew, him and Orion both knew, that no grudge would last between them. So up until now, we know that they have some sort of relationship. Again, this kind of is suggestive that it's like more than what we think. So Lance makes a comment about him being late, which is really saying something because Lance is never on time. And Darius confesses that he was following Roxy, also known as Tory, because he can't say her preferred name because that would be too respectful. And that she was jogging later than expected, so he had to stalk her later than expected. We don't know why he's following her, other than he's whatever. And Lance then makes a comment that he has seen Darius naked too many times as Darius gets out of his dragon form and starts putting clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Orion's like, "I've seen you naked too many times." So we're like, oh, they're fucking. That's
it
what
does sound like that.
It sounds like
it
that.
does sound like they're fucking.
Right?
And the way they were like, no grudge can last between us sounds like you're fucking.
Oh, you're in love with each other.
Yeah.
So Darius is like complaining that he does not want to be going back to his parents to sleep, but he doesn't have a choice because he needs to be around gold to replenish his magic. And the only way was to go to his family's vault. Lance did though mention like, "Hey, what about Xavier?" And that cheered Darius up. And Xavier is Darius's brother, and he's really excited to see him. This is Xavier. We'll tell you why in a second. Is this from Dragon Tales?
There's a picture of Xavier.
Oh.
Yeah, that's, what the fuck was his name? Starts with R.
Okay, well, we'll get there. I thought that was...
No, I had an actual art of Xavier.
See, here's the thing. Daria printed off a bunch of pictures of characters I don't know yet, and I was, like, going through them, and I was like, I don't know these people, so I'm just not going to use them, so that's where we're at.
For the initiated, I printed off Elise's boys, too.
Which one is he?
There you go.
Oh!
The one labeled Xavier.
Oh, so cute! I love him! Okay, we have Xavier. That's so exciting.
And I think he's in the same art style as everybody else.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
That's adorable.
What are you doing?
Oh my god.
I kind of watched it and I was like, no. But then it was, yeah.
Xavier, we got there. So Darius is excited to see Xavier. But Lance also is like, I also don't like these trips. So he's like going with Darius to his house or something. We don't know. We do learn about Xavier, though, that Darius feels bad for leaving him alone with his father. There's no buffer from his father's rages, and they would fall on Xavier. He does feel comfort in the fact that Xavier doesn't get the brunt of it as badly because, like, Darius is the heir, so there's more pressure on him. So he's like, Xavier's situation is less bad than mine was, but I still feel bad about it. So we don't know much about his dad, but that's not a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lance asks if Darius wants to race again. And Darius accuses Darius of cheating last time to win. So Darius is like, you want to lose again so soon? And Lance is like, you cheated last time. And Darius is like, overtaking you isn't cheating. And Lance is like, it is when you cut me up and you aren't wearing a helmet. You know I can't put your life in danger. Huh? Darius goes, well, it's not my fault you're so obsessed with me. And Lance is like, yeah, maybe tonight's the night. I'll finally pluck up the nerve to act on my undying love for you. They're not fucking.
It's immediate sarcasm.
Yeah.
But there's something else going on.
There's something else going on. And he does make the comment that Lance cannot put Darius's life in danger.
Won't.
Can't. Darius thinks about how he wishes they could spend some more time together like they did when they were kids. But they've had to downplay their friendship at the academy. So just friends. They agree that they have some things to discuss, so they will ride together. So on their car ride back to Darius's parents, they're discussing some really important stuff. Lance first asks Darius about breaking up with Sphinx, who's Marguerite.
Mm-hmm.
And Darius seems to be really nonchalant about it. He's like, I'm going to have to find a dragon shifter to marry. So, like, that's not an option. Whatever. And I'm kind of on a timeline for that, too, because if I can't find one, I'm going to have to marry my cousin, and I don't want to do that.
Gross.
So now they're shifting the conversation to the fire. Darius says the FIB declared the fire an accident, but they are still doing a full investigation. But Darius did get back, confirmed his suspicions that the draining dagger was gone. Lance confirmed that a fire would not have been able to destroy something so dark, so that they can agree that somebody stole it. Dun dun dun.
Draining dagger. Dark magic.
So Lance is like, we cannot risk anyone finding out what they were up to. And if the FIB finds out that Darius has this dagger or like what they're doing, they're going to jail. So Lance is also like, hey, Francesca, they would be conducting searches on everybody's room because they think somebody's helping the nymphs get on campus and they're looking for evidence. And Darius is like, that's boring pillow talk. And Orion's like, nah, she's a Capricorn, whatever that means. And they disagree on everything, and it's not going to work out long term, and it's not an issue. They're both cool with it. They're just like...
They're just fucking.
Yeah. And obviously using each other for information. But Darius is still worried that if a teacher or an FIB agent finds the dagger, it is going to get traced back to Darius. And Lance really assures him that he's going to volunteer to help do all of the searches. So if he comes across it, he doesn't have to worry about it. We know nothing about this dagger, what they're up to, why Lance is going on this trip. We know nothing.
No, they just dumped a bunch of questions on you and then, like, peaced out.
Yeah. But Darius does make a sweet little comment, and he says, what would I do without you? And Lance says, in quotes, take more of your own beatings from your father for a start, which very much dampened the mood. And Lance had to say, you know what, forget it. I don't blame you for it. And all we know about that situation is that Lance is, like, getting in the way of his father's punishments. So Darius, like, in his mind with some internal thoughts, we sort of get out of this that it's Lance's job to protect Darius from any possible threats, and his father thinks that he couldn't do that if he was too far away from him. So if they weren't at least a mile of each other, and that there's some sort of bond that like wants to keep them that close. Um, they want to stay within the mile. They have to stay within the mile, or like if they go too far, it seems like they just get upset or something. That's kind of all we know about it at
Yeah.
this point, at least. And so that's why Lance is coming with him in the first place. And also that his father would be pissed if he didn't. Darius does think about one time where Darius had gone to the northern Terrania for a long weekend with this girl that he had been seeing, and he spent the whole time pining for Orion because of the distance. And he ghosted the girls, flied back in the middle of the night to see him, and Darius found Lance wasted in his apartment because he was trying to drink away his longing for him. They stayed in the same bed for 2 nights, trying to resist temptation to spoon each other. The only exception to this rule seemed to be when Lance went to the mortal realm to grab Vega twins. Weird. Gross and weird.
Yep.
They have a bond.
Yep.
That's all we know. We do find out, though, that the Libra star sign that Darius had on his forearm is the bond mark. That is Orion's star sign. So they had tried to sever the bond before, but they aren't as powerful as Darius's father, and they hope that will eventually change. They finally make it to this property of the Acruxes?
Yeah, Acrux.
Acrux's family home. His mother greets them in a very passive kind of way. She's kind of like really like mannequin-ish, as she's described. Darius seems to think that she enjoys the royalties of her life and doesn't really care for much else, just like a little bit robotic. His mother is a bit weird about his brother when he asks though. He's like, "Can I go see him?" And she's like, "Yeah, well, he's sick right now, so he should be left alone." And he's like, "That's a weird answer. I'm going to see my brother." He does hear his like father on the phone in another room, so he's like, "Let me go see my brother before my father like freaks out that I'm home." So he goes into Xavier's room, and he kind of seems a little bit off. They have a little bit of small talk, but Xavier finally confides in him, saying that his order emerged, insinuating that it wasn't a good order.
Yeah.
Darius is telling him, like, "I don't care what your order is. Like, who cares? That's not a big deal." And all of a sudden, his father booms into the room and really angry. And he's like, "So you told him?" And he's like really pissed. So he ends up bullying Xavier. He's like screaming at him to change into his order, and Xavier's like, "No, like I just won't shift. I like don't make me do this. I promise I'll be better." Very like traumatic event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, he shifts, and Xavier is a Pegasus.
He's so cute.
I know. And Darius's dad, huge dick. Like, we're not happy with him. Oh, also, not only is Xavier a Pegasus, he's also like a lilac Pegasus.
Yeah, he's so adorable.
And apparently darker colored Pegasuses are like more badass or
They're
whatever.
like more dominant or whatever.
Yeah, so it's like in this pure bloodline's eyes, worst thing that could possibly happen to him.
Yeah, because now he's also like a little bit of a sub boy.
Yeah, so Xavier's father just wants to kill him to cover it up. But he describes the mother as getting a backbone and says no, she just has to hide in this room because he can't go to the academy. He can't bring this kind of shame to the family. So Darius's father is like, "I can't be in a room with this any longer, and I need to talk to you, Darius, about your action." He says he's furious that he lost control of his order. They're in his office now. It shows weakness for something as little as a fire. And, like, he's awful. He's terrible. We hate him.
Yeah. Daddy Acrux does literally nothing to endear himself to anybody immediately.
Yeah. So eventually he starts to like talk a little bit about the plan for the Vega twins, and he says, "Okay, we read them incorrectly. We're not going to be able to shove them out," which is like pissing Darius off because his father just forced him to bully these poor girls.
Yeah.
And now he's like, you can stop now. He's like, no, you've kind of ruined a lot of my life.
Yeah.
So we're starting to, I guess, get some redemption for Darius. An attempt at redemption, a little bit more context at least. At this point, we just need to understand that, like, this book is never going to be kind to anybody.
No, and they're all very deeply flawed people.
Deeply.
All of them. Doing their absolute worst to try to do their absolute best.
Yeah. So his father is like, we got an incorrect read on them. We're going to have to change course. He wants to meet them. And as Darius is like, what do you mean, meet them? His father goes on this rant, like, you don't need to understand what I'm doing. You are not my equal. And you don't need to act like one. And we start to see some pretty severe abuse of Darius that we won't get into. But as this is happening, Lance bursts in, and he's screaming, trying to stop Darius's father. His father slams back at Orion onto the wall. Lots of wall pining and pinning. He uses his air magic to get Orion on the wall, and he's like continuously screaming. And yeah, it's just kind of this whole mess. And Darius accepts kind of in this moment that he's just like not strong enough to get his father with his power. And so he just like, this is where we're at. Once it's all over, Lance gets off the wall. He starts healing Darius, and he thinks about the fire. Darius thinks about the fire. He feels as though there's no way it was an accident, and he wants to bring wrath on whoever it was, especially with the dagger missing. Because he's like, I'm mad now. Like, this has been an awful experience for me. So, but once again, you know it's Tory.
Yeah. There shouldn't even be a question of who did this.
Whatever. Before this chapter ends, Darius offers Orion some blood to help him repower. And as this is happening, like Orion is feeding on Darius. He's just like wants Orion to be closer and closer. They also note that they should escalate their plans. Their bond is getting worse, and Orion offers to double the efforts in training for their plan. We don't know what their plan is, though. They know it would be dangerous to escalate their plans, but Darius agrees, like, we need to risk this. We need to start this as soon as we get back to campus, but they do have to be very careful with the FIB running around, and we don't know anything beyond that.
You know what's crazy?
What's crazy?
Is that, like, they've alluded to the fact that the dad did this to them.
Yes.
And it clearly is some kind of bond that really wants them to fuck.
Yeah.
But he's like, you need to marry your cousin.
I know.
It's so crazy.
It is so crazy.
And, like, emotionally manipulative, but, like, in the weirdest way possible.
Weirdest.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Because, like, those boys also don't want to fuck.
No.
They are not sexually attracted to each other.
No, not even a little bit. They're just... It's such a weird punishment to provide your child. But what it seems like is... Darius's dad needs Darius alive.
Yeah, there's something there where, like, he can't risk losing him.
Yeah.
But he also, like, really doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. And you could also tell how powerful the magic was for Orion to, like, try and save him so aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
He was screaming in there. Okay, on chapter 8, we're going back to Tory's perspective. And we are actually heading to Washer's water elemental class. And that is Jim Carrey as Ace Ventura. And Washer is like the creepy teacher that they have. He's a siren, and he feeds off of other emotions, and it's really gross.
Yeah, he chooses to do it in the grossest way possible.
Yeah. Tory is still, like, struggling with thinking about the previous night where she was underwater, like, she's having some PTSD. But she's also really determined to walk with her head held high. And as they're getting into their outfits, these, like, skimpy water outfits that Washer has recommended, they also see Washer in an equally as skimpy outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 seconds after they leave, they immediately receive hazing from Max. And he ends up getting in a very, like, he gets this, like, really friendly touch from Washer. And Darius is back. So Darius gives Tory a, like, weird look of interest. And Tory just receives 10 points to her house just for showing up after the whole situation. Darcy doesn't, though.
That's because Darcy didn't almost get murdered or drowned. I swear, I totally recognize the fact that, like, trauma is not a sliding scale. But this is fiction, and
This is fiction.
it kind of is in this context.
There's no real magical fire, which is really disappointing, but there's none of it.
One day.
So Tori and Darcy are getting into the water, and Max, like, starts freezing the ice again as they're getting into the water. Like, it's so awful. And so Tori's, like, panicking again, and she brings her magic that starts to, like, heat the water before things escalate. And then all of a sudden, Geraldine swims over, and she is the head of ASS. ASS. And her friend, Angelica is also there with her. And so Geraldine says that Washer has instructed her to come over because her and Angelica's orders are both proficient in the water, and they can help the Vega twins learn some water magic. Geraldine then just, like, takes her bathing suit top off, and she's apparently got...
She's got glorious tits, doesn't she? Yeah, they're exceptional tits.
Yeah, so they make a comment about that. And she turns into her order. She is described as a big guard dog by Max before she turns into her order. And Max is like, ooh, like, what are you gonna do? And then she's like, hey, I have poisonous teeth, and I can kill the strongest of Fae in 15 seconds or less, or something like that. And it was just, like, very specific. 15 seconds, 15 minutes, whatever. Darius then says that his bastard cousin, apparently Angelica is his bastard cousin, is a smaller version of the King of Beasts. And apparently Angelica's mother had an affair with Darius's uncle. So, Angelica turns into a glimmering red dragon who is smaller than Darius, and Geraldine transforms into a Cerberus, which is a 3-headed dog.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to be enough for the heirs to be, like, not really willing to have this fight today, and they backed up. Anyways, some trust is being built with ASS, the Almighty's sovereign society.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much that class. We don't know what they learned about water. Because that's irrelevant to the plot of this book.
Yeah.
So the next night, Tori actually starts to hear, in the middle of the night, some, like, music. And she starts to describe it as, like, a soul speaking to her. If a soul could make magic, it was just super intriguing to her. And as she's, like, listening to this, she finds herself awake and on her feet. And she's walking towards the music. She kind of immediately realizes, like, somebody's probably casting a spell on me, but there's no part of her that can resist, that even, like, really wants to resist. She's just so, like,
into it
about it. So she follows the music outside, past the orb, into the water territory, and then into, like, another trail of mossy vines, and finally comes into the clearing of white flowers that are in full bloom in the middle of the night. It's super weird. She sees a man with his back facing to her, and he has shimmering scales lining his flesh. She recognizes him immediately. It's Max, our siren. So she's like, I just walked into a trap of some sort. And so he turns around as the song stops, and abruptly he looks at her, and he goes, oh, for the love of God and everything that is destined, why the hell did it have to be you? And she's like, you tell me, why am I here? She probably, like, she just immediately turns around, and she's like, I'm leaving. And she basically, like, hits a wall. And he curses. that she won't be able to leave until she kisses him. She's like appalled by that, obviously, and he shares that she was summoned by his siren song. He doesn't control it. It picks someone who the magic thinks needs to feel his power, and it picked her. It's the way the siren order works. When the stars align, no idea what stars, no idea what alignment means, but when the stars align, he needs to release his song and wait the arrival of the person destined to hear it. Whoever hears it is song spelled. They have no choice but to follow and kiss the siren. During that kiss, the power is reversed, and instead of Max feeding on her emotions, Tory will feed on his.
I think it's really entertaining that you also know, like, literally nothing about astrology going into this, too.
Nothing.
So that's, like, the things they're saying where I'm like, yeah, you know, like, the different constellations do the thing, and then And, like, I'm not a big astrology person either, but, like, I know enough.
Yeah, I know
So
nothing.
you're
I
just
know
like-
absolutely nothing.
Extra level of confused by what's
So
happening.
confused. And like all the character traits, I never. Right over my head. Somebody educate me.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, Max doesn't want it to be Tory. He doesn't want her looking inside of his emotions and that kind of thing. That's not, like, really his idea of a good time, especially considering their relationship. But nonetheless, they still continue to flirt. And he's like, you know, I could kill you. Or she says that. I don't know. Somebody says, like, you could kill me right now. Except that was outlawed. Sirens are not allowed to do that to their song spelled. And she's like, well, I'm gonna get all of your secrets. And then they kiss. And it gets very passionate and deep. And as, like, he's kind of, like, pulling her towards him, and she starts to get a look in Max's mind. She starts to hear a man's voice. She knows to be his father. He's saying, there was nothing anyone could do for her. By the time anybody realized she was sick, it was too late. I don't know why she hid the symptoms from me. I could have done something. And she, like, immediately knows that the man is talking about his mom. She then sees another woman looking into the room in this, like, vision she's looking at. And Max knows, therefore Tory knows, that this woman has caused his mother's death somehow. And the stepmother, the person in the room, wanted her gone. His mother was his dad's dirty little secret. Max turns out to be a bastard, as his father married his wife to keep bloodlines pure, but he was in love with another woman, Max's mother. In order to keep it hidden, they'd hid his mom away, and the wife pretended to be pregnant. If anyone had found out about him being a bastard, they could push his half-sibling to take his place as heir. However, his wife wanted her child on the throne. So she killed Max's mother, and she probably wants him gone too.
Yep.
So Tory starts to have some awareness during their kiss and wonders why he even likes the smell of other people or the taste of other people's fear. Because that's, like, Max's whole thing, is that he likes to feed off of fear. But Tory's like, this is literally awful. I hate this. But she does get a response from Max in his head. And it's like, what he says in her head is, I know that taking their fear from them makes them happier. He enjoys the sense of peace and calm it left with them. He also feels that liking the fear to other people seems more intimidating, so he helps cover up the fact that he preferred using his power on softer emotions. So if he had it his way, he would, you know, feed off of, like, comfort and joy and whatever.
Yeah.
But he takes people's fear, so it makes them feel better, and he just pretends to like it, so he's, like, more intimidating. Heaven forbid we have a sensitive man in our midst.
A little bit of a secret softie.
So they finish. Tory's, like, hand is in his mohawk, and he's, like, pushing her hoodie off, and it's getting all sexy. And she finally gains the strength to, like, push him away. And they feel the spell breaks, and they immediately start just yelling at each other about the situation. Like, she's like, what the heck was that? Why could I see your emotions? I hated that. And Max is like, why did you do that? And it's just like this whole thing. So she used her own power on him. And he's like, what is it going to take you to keep you quiet about this whole situation? About my mom, about me being a bastard, about me being a softie? Like, what is it going to take to keep you quiet? And she was like, what's the big deal? Like, everybody on here just, like, likes to fuck. So everyone's horny. I don't know what the big deal is. It doesn't matter that you're a bastard. She's like, I bet there's so many illegitimate kids here. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, okay, but the celestial families, they're held to a different standard, right? They want to keep their bloodlines pure. And they have to, like, navigate this stepmother situation because he doesn't want to offend her. And that would be super offensive if they found out that Max wasn't her true kid. And then also, another big portion of it is that Max also, like, just continues to tell her too. Like, he's mad at her for taking his secrets, but then he just keeps talking about them.
He keeps giving her more context around his secrets.
So he tells her that his mother had Minotaur genes in her bloodline, which is apparently embarrassing. Maybe not as embarrassing as the Pegasus, but still pretty low on the power. And that would make him, like, less marriageable. Like, he wouldn't be able to find a mate if people knew that he had Minotaur genes. So this is a big secret. So then, like, she's like, well, nothing would stop me from marrying somebody I love. Like, I don't care what order it is. And he's kind of scoffs at that, and he's like, even if it was an Elysian mate with a Pegasus, he probably wouldn't be allowed to marry him. Like, it doesn't matter. And I'm guessing Elysian mates, I'm just making the assumption that they're, like, the fated mates. Like, if you have your, like, one true love, you're, like, he wouldn't even be allowed to marry them if they were a weaker order.
Which seems like a really bad idea to prevent from happening. But...
Yep. Yeah, it does seem like that. Kind of sounds like how Max was born, actually.
Yeah.
He shares that his stepmother is continuing to plan for his downfall, and he reiterates that nobody can know about this, including the other heirs. And she was like, oh, the other heirs don't know about it? And she's like, yeah, whatever, I'll keep your secret. And then she leaves. And this does seem to be authentic that, like, she's going to keep the secret. They haven't, like, fully decided that they're stooping to the heirs level, and this kind of seems like crossing a line. I can't find the line, but there does seem to be a line.
There's a theoretical, probably constantly shifting line.
Above the line, attempted murder of students, non-consent, abuse. Below the line, fucking your teachers,
being a bastard. I think those are the only things so far that have been below the line.
Yeah.
And, like, universally agreed on amongst all of them.
Yeah. Oh, and sirens can be creepy. That's allowed.
Yeah.
Speaking of Washer.
Our favorite teacher.
We are going to go back to Darcy. And we are in Astrom's old classroom for our tarot class. Both Darcy and Tory are here, but we are in Darcy's mind. They felt kind of weird. Like, this is the last place that they had actually seen Astrom before he had died. And as they were walking over, they also noted that, like, Astrom's place where he died is, like, now growing with flowers and stuff like that. It's kind of like it never happened. So they enter the Mercury chambers. Darcy, like, immediately starts getting hazing from Haylee as she walks into the classroom about her hair, until Professor Washer walks into the room. And he's apparently filling in for Astrom until the Academy hires a replacement. So he's like, okay, I'm not really good at tarot cards. That was kind of Astrom's thing, so we're going to work on palmistry.
Okay.
So he's, like, as creepy as ever. He starts his, like, demonstrations on Tory, and he's, like, brushing her hands, and he predicts that she has an excellent taste in lovers. And then moves on to Darcy, who tells her that she has a forbidden romance in her future, which I don't know that any of us needed a palm reading for that, but
No. I am pretty sure they've sprinkled that with glitter already. And a sign.
Yeah. So there is kind of a comment about how Washer gets away with a lot of this crap because he's a siren. And apparently, according to like Sophia and Diego, as long as he doesn't actually fuck a student, it's fine.
Because that's the line.
Yeah.
And the fucking students blow it.
Yeah. And so we actually do get some information about the rule book with the teacher association, like the teacher-student thing. It does say that any teacher who crossed that line would not just be fired. They'd be power-shamed by the Celestial Council and stripped of their rank in the whole of Solaria, which is such an aggressive line to hold, considering, like, all of these people are over 18.
Yeah.
They go to school where attempted murder is perfectly fine,
2
save
weeks of
for a couple of
detention.
detentions. What are we doing?
Yeah, and I don't know if did they explain what the power shaming was in this?
No, not yet. I don't know what that is. We don't know what that is as readers yet. We just know that they get power shamed, and they just like completely get stripped of their rank. Like, this is crazy. This is a crazy rule book. I want to read it all. Here's what you can do. Here's what you shouldn't do. Here's what.
Of the many novellas that go with this series, I don't think that's one of them, unfortunately. But it would be entertaining. What if it was just that?
Oh my god, a rule book of Zodiac Academy? Oh my god.
This says don't fuck your teacher.
I should make one. I'll make one and post it.
Zodiac Academy rulebook. Don't fuck the teacher. Consequences.
Yeah.
None for the student either, for the record. I don't think they've ever mentioned that you would get expelled or anything. It's just on the teacher.
No, the student can do whatever she wants. Or he. Okay, now they're starting their palm readings, and the twins start chatting about Astrum and if they're ever going to figure out what the card meant and what he had wanted them to know. So we're going to do a quick reminder of what the card said. It said, "I made a mistake and now my time is up. The shadow has discovered me and there is no hope for me to escape their wrath. The answers you seek are hidden between Leo and Libra. Don't trust the flames. Claim your throne." Couple things that I want to dissect here. The shadow. As somebody who still hasn't read these books, the shadow, there's a shadow realm. That's where the nymphs are from. It's got to have something to do with that. The answers you seek are hidden between Leo and Libra. We know that Orion and Darius are Leo and Libras.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Darius is Leo, Orion is Libra. Darcy does suggest to Tory that she could actually see if Orion might know what the card meant. Washer then gets everyone to switch partners. Darcy actually ends up with Haylee, and they kind of get into their little, like, situation. Like, Darcy's like, "Why do you hate me so much? I don't get it." And Haylee is like, "I'm trying to keep you away from Seth." Well, she calls him Sethi, but she wants Darcy away from Sethi. She not only wants Darcy to stay away from Seth's throne and therefore Kylie's power, but Kylie's also not super secretive about Darcy being more than a threat than that. Like, Seth is literally keeping Darcy's hair on his wrist 24/7.
Yeah.
And she's more powerful than Haylee. So Haylee seems to think that, like, yes, Seth wants them gone, but even better for Seth, what if Darcy was, like, on Seth's arm on the throne?
Yeah. Consorts,
right?
baby.
So that is also a great option for Seth if he can make Darcy bow to her. Tyler actually does get a whiff of this conversation, which is kind of bad news for Haylee, because he just posts on Facebook that Seth is obsessed with Darcy, and Seth is, like, clearly really agitated by this. Like, he's angry. And, like, usually when men get angry, you've struck a nerve in some sort that they're not willing to confront with real emotions. So they're walking out of the class now. Darcy receives a notification that she has a liaison meeting with Orion that night at 7 p.m. And that makes her smile, and she starts to feel like home in this academy. So around 7 p.m., she does head over to Orion's class, and he's obviously late to it. And by 7:30 p.m., he is still not there, and she just, like, gives up. She's like, he's not coming.
15-minute rule.
Yep.
I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah, 15 minutes seems generous.
Yeah.
So she leaves Jupiter Hall, and as she's heading around to the orb, she actually hears Seth, who is with Kylie and a group of his wolf pack, standing around Tyler Corbin, who has this bloody face and a broken nose. And Tyler's the one who just posted this thing about Seth being obsessed with Darcy, and now Darcy's coming in, and it's a whole thing. So Darcy, like, starts being like, hey, stop hurting Tyler. And that obviously just starts a huge fight. Darcy, but actually is able to conjure some magic, though, and she tries to send fire Seth's way to no avail. Seth starts to turn into a wolf, and he's like, let's go hunting, boys. So then Darcy decides to run, and she heads towards the Venus Library. The librarian doesn't like this. It's just so silly. The librarian is like, Seth, take your games outside. And he's like, the Vega twin is over there, but do it in your own order. Like, she's just like, I don't care what happens, which I'm really disappointed in. The librarians are supposed to be a rule follower.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Maybe she was just like, get that away from my books.
Yeah. That's usually what the librarian's priorities are. So she goes outside. She tries to get into the Mars laboratories and realizes, like, there's no way in. She's not going to be fast enough, and she's rushing away from this wolf pack that's gaining on her. And all of a sudden, a hand shoots out and drags her through a door. And she's being plunged into darkness. She starts to scream, and a palm slams down on her mouth. She's dragged against a hard body, and the door clicked close. And that is when she smells cinnamon and realizes it's not Seth, it's Orion. Orion tells her to be quiet as they hear Kylie and the wolves looking outside for her, and eventually, after a little bit, they do decide that they can't find her, and they end up leaving as Orion removes his palm from her mouth, and now they're, like, alone in a dark room. She's pinned up against the wall. Drinking game, every time I say someone gets pinned up against a wall.
Take a shot. Half a milligram.
And they kind of just, like, stay like that for about a page and a half. It just, like, doesn't move.
There's also minimal talking taking place.
No, I'm not
too.
kidding. It's a page and a half. Nobody talks, and they just sit there staring at each other.
With, like, a weird internal dialogue of...
Yes.
Why are you so sexy?
It's super weird.
Why am I so into it?
It's super weird. And then...
and she's crying.
Yeah. It was super awkward for everyone, including myself. And then, like, all of a sudden he kind of just starts screaming at her to move. Like, he just freaks out and he's like, move, what are you doing? And, like, don't talk to me. And then he, like, tries to leave, and then he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm going home. And he's like, we have a liaison session. Like, what is happening right now? And so then, she's like, excuse me, go fuck yourself, sir, and, like, starts to walk away. So he just goes over, picks her up, tosses her over his shoulder, and then as he's doing that and he's taking her back to his office, Principal Nova walks by, and she's like, are you having a problem with a student? And he's like, no. And she's like, good, I'm glad you rounded her up.
They're not actively fucking? So it's not a problem.
It's not a problem. Because you can abuse your students, you just can't sleep with them.
You just can't sleep with them. Dick must stay in your pants. Untouched.
So anyway, she's like, bro, okay, I'll walk, like, put me down. And then they go to his office, and they start talking about nymphs. And, like, here's the whole liaison session in a nutshell. I have, like, 2 bullet points here. First, he tells Darcy that the 2 of them can't be walking around alone. They're in too much danger. And then Darcy asks him to look at the card, because, like, he has some sort of stake in it. It's a Leo and a Libra. That's it. The connection's there. And basically Orion tells her he was taught by Astrum when he was at Zodiac Academy, but Astrum, like, hated Orion and his family. Astrum was a royalist, and because Orion's family was against them, they didn't like each other, because Orion's family supported the celestial families. And then he leaves her with this quote after their liaison session. He says, "There's many things that I'm saying and for good, or there's many things that I'm not saying and for good reason. But I'll tell you this. I've spent most of my life hating the Savage King and anyone associated with him too, including you and your sister when you first came here. But I learned a long time ago that blood doesn't define a person, so I shouldn't have judged you so quickly. You're unlucky to bear the title that you do, and I would never bow to either of you for many reasons. But you aren't bad people. That being said, I will do what it takes to ensure Darius and the other heirs sit on the throne of Solaria, and I urge you to never underestimate that vow." Which does hit a little bit deeper knowing about the bond.
Yeah.
Because he's like, if you try to hurt him,
it's not going to go well.
There's nothing that I can do about it.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know that, obviously. But with that being said, Orion is starting to show his cards. Like, she can understand that he's probably not helping the nymphs at this point. At least he's not the one doing the murders.
Mm-hmm.
But we know he's on the heir side, and that he's also probably battling with the fact that he likes this girl. He can't have her, and he's supposed to hate her. So,
yeah,
there's some Orion lore for us. Okay, back to Tory for chapter number 10. Tory is sitting at House Ignis with Sophia working on some blocking of coercion. They finally decided that was something that was important. But Tory is getting better at doing this, but when she is distracted, she kind of lets things slip past her defenses. So what she's doing is she's using her magic to create ice cubes while Sophia is trying to coerce her. So that Tory's magic is occupied on a concentration spell while she's also doing a concentration. It's that kind of thing. So while they're working on that, Orion bursts in with 6 FIB agents and finally shares that they're going to be doing all of their room searches for everyone. So nobody's allowed to return to their room until the search is over. There's a dagger and a bunch of gold in both of their rooms. So Tory comes up with a plan really quickly. So she basically asks Sophia to coerce her into pouring icy water all over her. She's like, "We need something stronger," to Sophia. And when she does nothing to block it. So now she's just covered in water. And I should also note that they made it an important thing to note that she's in a white t-shirt.
Of course. If you're going to cover someone in water, they better be in a white t-shirt. Otherwise, what's the point?
So as she's drenched, Orion comes over and she's like, "Can I go get changed?" all innocently. And he's like, "Use your fire magic. You're supposed to be able to do this." And she's like, "Oh, fuck." And so she starts to do that. And then she starts burning her clothes on purpose. And
everyone's already seen all of it anyway.
Yeah.
That's
and then
story.
And so she starts trying to letting it burn her and pretending that it's actually impacting her, even though it's not. Again, important. I feel like the fire has got to have something to do with fire. She's got it, she's something with fire is good for her element of magic. Because also, what I'll just remember from the first one, there were these weird times where she didn't get drained by certain magic, and it was always when it had to do with fire.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, she starts burning herself, faking it. And an FIB was just let her go change. And so Orion was like, "Okay, well, I'm coming with you." And she goes in there. He steps in and she was like, "Are you gonna watch me change? Or probably not, right? So give her some space." So when he does leave the room, she quickly shoves a dagger and coins into a black sock. And she chucks it out the window before changing. He asks her what's taking so long. And I actually do think this is clever, even though I don't know if the author meant this to be clever. She grabs Orion's hoodie that he gave her while they were at the pool to warm her up. And so I think the insinuation is that Orion will look at it and be like, Tory is helping him out. Because if they found Orion's shirt or a hoodie in her room, that could look really bad. So again, I don't know if the author is meant to be this clever, but I think that removes suspicion from Orion, and Orion's like, "Oh, you were trying to help me out, thank you."
Yeah.
I don't know. So she goes back down with Sophia, and waits exactly 15 minutes. We're very exact in this book. She waits exactly 15 minutes, and she gets up and says she remembers she has a package waiting for her at Pluto's offices, so she rushes around Ignis to try and find her sock. But she doesn't want to look suspicious, so she kind of like sets around the area, scrolling on Facebook, and she's like making sure she doesn't get followed. Noting while she's on Facebook, she kind of finds this like group of girls at the school who created a group to try and cheer Darius up after his after his fire. They're just like, oh, we feel so bad for Darius. And as she's doing this, she gets this really real feeling that someone is watching her. A huge gust of wind gusts down on her, and she spots a golden dragon driving from the sky. Darius swoops down, lands right in front of her, and he's naked again because he's coming from his order form, and just, we have to see Darius naked a lot.
Yeah, the people that shift into any form of animal don't get to keep their clothes, so
No.
nudity is kind of just like the norm.
No. And every time Tory sees him naked, she's like,
he is pretty.
He is pretty. And they exchange some words. He accuses her of scrolling through Facebook of pictures of him, which was kind of true because that's where she was on this group of like, yeah. So he doesn't notice the sock though. And so he starts to like walk away. She waits for him to disappear. She grabs it, she puts it in her satchel, and she heads off to the air house to Darcy. But as she's walking over, she gets this other prickling feeling that someone is again watching her. So she like stops, she like pretends to tie her shoe or something, and she kind of looks over, and Darius is once again trying to stay hidden and following her. So she decides to alter her course, and she goes to the orb instead. She starts jogging towards it. Once she gets there, she like grabs this water bottle and kind of like distracts him so that she can find a way to hide without him seeing her. And she like is like kind of watching him from afar as he starts to get frustrated about like where she is. There's like kind of that moment where like Darius starts to get close to her, and she like kind of like shimmies out, like they're kind of playing hide and seek. And then she finally manages to get away and sprints to the air house to Darcy. She immediately tells Darcy about what happened with the investigation. They're searching her room and that they need to get rid of the gold, and their plan is to bury it. So they rush out to the Wailing Wood. Again.
Best place to go.
They go to the heart of the forest, and for this, it's probably smart.
Yeah, like, well, there's a lot of people that use that for some reason.
Yeah, like they're like main, whatever. So they're trying to dig a hole with their magic. They can't. So they start digging with their hands, and they hear, "Holy guacamole, your majesties!" Jerry shows up. And they pretty much are like, okay, we're fucked anyways, so like we're just trusting you now. And it did seem like the class with Washer helped and stuff, but they're just like, well, we have no choice but to trust you. So they're like, they told her everything. They're like, it was me at the fire. And this kind of like starts the real friendship with them. We do get a little bit of lore on the Cerberus Order. They actually have to eat aconite, which is like wolf's bane, to replenish their magic. And that's where she was. She was gathering supplies, which is apparently easier to do at night. And that's how she came across them. So they confessed everything. They're guilty of setting the fire. They need help burying the gold. And I'm just going to read the quote of Jerry. She says, "Look no further. Geraldine Groose is a firm friend and a trustworthy protector of the true heirs to the throne of Solaria. Your scandal is my scandal. Your war is my war. And your enemy is my enemy. Darius Acrux should burn in the fiery pits of the afterlife for what he did to you. If he was on fire and I was in my Cerberus form, I wouldn't even extinguish the flames with my urine. Please allow me to assist you with earth magic, your highnesses." Also, short form, yeah, I'll help. The speech is probably better than, like, honestly, what I could come up for wedding vows. That was, like, adorable.
Jerry's my favorite. Behind my boys. Ahead of my boys? I'm not sure.
I don't know either. I don't know who I...
It takes time.
Yeah.
I don't think you can actually pick a favorite character until you get to, like, book 7
Yeah,
or 8.
at the moment, they're all just not quite there for me.
Yeah.
They all have some growing to do.
It takes time.
Yeah. So Jerry basically, like, does the whole magic hole. She chucks the bag of gold into the hole, and she earns a "you're ripped" from Tory, and Jerry asks if they want to come and see her play pitball sometime. And they're like, yes, sure, like, we're friends now. And Tory was about to put the dagger in the, like, hole, and she kind of hesitates, but ultimately she does decide to let go of it, but it's kind of a, like...
Yeah, there's
I
a
don't wanna give it
moment
up.
of, what if I kept the stabby thing?
Yeah.
That talks to me.
It's very Nightblood. Jerry covers up the stolen treasure and encourages a patch of pink and gold flowers to grow over it, and Tori drops a pin on her atlas so that they can remember where it is. They swear to each other that they won't tell anyone, and they cheers to their new friendship and part their ways, which is so sweet. We're going to switch to Darcy's perspective, because it's the heirs' time to get their dorms searched, and the FIB and Orion come to Darcy's dorms. This one's like kind of a traumatic event too. Orion ends up going to Diego's room first, and Darcy's just hearing this happen, but Diego screams that it was his mi abuelas. I hope I said that right. And Diego's like screaming at him to stop. And Orion does this asshole thing where he uses wind to trap him up against the wall, yet again.
Against the wall!
And the walls, like, start to shake, and he begs Orion not to read the journal entry. That apparently there was a journal in this box. And Diego is like, please don't read my journal entry. I've had that since the, like, first time that I came to Zodiac Academy. And Orion is like, He smashes the box that was his mi abuela's against a wall. It breaks into 100 shards, and then he starts reading his diaries right from the beginning. That he's falling in love with someone from the Pegasus Order. We know that it is Sophia. And Francesca, who's also in the room with them, is kind of like, hey, Orion, maybe we are getting a little off topic here. And so Darcy finally has enough. Like, he's not doing it, and she yells, stop it, and she tries to shoot fire towards Orion. He removes the oxygen from the air, and, like, removing oxygen from the air in a hallway full of people seems like the logistics maybe don't work out on that. But then again, what happens next? She, like, brings vines up to wrap around him, and we also don't really know how in dorm rooms she's getting that. So the logistics for the magic system is you can just, like...
if you need it, it's there.
Yeah, there's no matter and energy rules in this world.
No.
So anyways, she's dropping vines around him. He's wielding the air to keep them away. She manages to lock one around his throat, and he slams back to the floor, sorry. Orion looks at Darcy and just goes, I was hoping you'd do that. And she goes, okay, what the fuck? So she's like, do I get punished for that? And then he grabs her hair and drags her and sinks his teeth into her neck, and starts to feed off of her power. This is a very sexually tense experience for both of them.
Yes.
Yes. So Darcy, like, moans, and she's like while he's feeding on her, she's like trying to convince herself that she doesn't like it.
Yeah, but she does.
And then he like stops biting her, and he like lingers on her neck for a second, and then
a little lick.
Yeah, and then reminds her that she has detention on Saturday, and then leaves and walks away. Francesca kind of like brushes his arm in a sort of protective way. And that almost makes Darcy growl at her.
Yeah, because she's feral. For that professor, she can't fuck.
And then Diego just casually walks over and was like, okay, are we still going to go to the Mars lab? Because that was their plan. So they're going to head to the Mars lab because she needs to get some ingredients for her hair. And Diego has agreed to help her with that.
Forgot she was still bald.
Yeah. No, we still have this subplot going on.
Forgot about that.
So she actually runs back to her room to grab a jacket because it's cold, and they see what they've done to her room. The place is completely torn apart. The mattress is flipped up. The clothes are everywhere. And the nightstand is the only thing that is still together. She does quickly look through the nightstand, and she realizes that Astrom's card was no longer there. But she's kind of curious about this because Francesca and Orion already know about it, so she doesn't understand why they would take it. And all of a sudden, she hears a voice that says death, and that's what the card says at the top of it. She looks around and she sees Seth in the doorway asking what the card means, which means he went into her room and stole it, which is just rude. He does end up coercing him into telling, uh, sorry, he ends up coercing her into telling him who wrote it, which was Astrum, and it gives him the insight that the shadow killed Astrum. He then asks her to kiss him, not coercion though, and she's like, no, also why? And he just continues to haze her and try to figure out what the card means. And she ends up telling him, like, I don't know. I don't know anything about Solaria. I don't know what
this
this
makes no sense to her.
Yeah, this means absolutely nothing. But Seth does recognize Leo and Libra as Darius and Orion. And he says, well, if that's who Astrum was referring to, then we'll be in the dark forever. The day they answer questions is the day hell freezes over. Which is kind of interesting insight because, like, now we know that Seth is also being kept secrets from.
Yeah. And Max is keeping secrets.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see the cracks in the you must all be a united front that know everything and anything about each other.
Right.
With no secrets.
Yeah.
Except all these secrets.
Except for all the secrets. So she basically is like, get out of my room, don't come back, and she goes and finds Diego. And Darcy notices Diego is obviously really sad, and he's like starts ranting about how much of a dick Orion is. He just like destroyed his grandma's box and read his journal in front of everybody. And she responds with, he's not all that bad. I don't think that's the appropriate response here.
I don't think that's what Diego was looking for.
No. But apparently that causes no tension. Darius isn't, or Diego's not offended by this. Apparently people in this world just have no ability to take things personally. And he basically just makes a comment like, wow, you're really becoming Fae. Darcy then tells Diego to like tell her about his grandmother, and apparently this is like, we get some Diego lore. Apparently his grandmother is the only person who ever really cared for her, but she died a year ago. He still has his parents, but he gets the feeling that they're not proud of him, and that's kind of it. They sent Diego to Zodiac Academy to prove himself, and he like feels shame that he hasn't found his order yet, and Darcy's like, hey, join the club, we're all misfits. But also, like, don't all Fae need to go to school?
So there's a bunch of schools.
Okay, so Zodiac
and
Academy
Zodiac
is like...
Academy is the top one.
Got it.
And then there's a whole bunch that are not so good.
Okay,
oh, fuck.
Noted. So they finally arrive at Mars Laboratories, and Darcy texts Lance to ask where she might find these things she's looking at for her potion. He texts her back immediately, making Darcy smile. So it's going to be on floor 3, lab 306, and she gets a collection of numbers that seems to be like a SKU number, barcode number, 6633211. And then he adds at the end of his text, will the ends still be blue? She asks Diego to stand watch as she goes to find the ingredients, and while doing so, ponders why the hell he would ask her about her hair color. And then also kind of ponders like, oh, I don't know. Well, am I going to dye it again?
There's a line in this book that I remember distinctly that has to do with her hair. And I don't know why, but it's like one of the few sentences in a book that I remember verbatim.
Oh my god, her hair really is a big part of this book.
Yeah, and I don't know why, because like it's not that romantic or anything, but it's there, and when you hit it, I'ma scream it.
Yeah. So she never really resolves like what she's gonna do with her hair after. But she goes up to the lab and she finds a professor sleeping at the desk just outside of the lab. And she kind of decides to just go for it. Turns out that list of numbers, it is actually not a barcode. It was a combination to a keypad that let you into the lab. The professor manages to stay asleep while she's opening it, and she goes in and she finds the rows of ingredients and potions and other magical items. They're alphabetical, so she actually first finds the Aquarius Moonstone, and that is the thing that is going to help her give Seth fleas. She then finds the dried pepper bark and the mother of pearl, no problem. She starts to look for the yellow crystal, so she heads to another room, and it's like she flicks on this light to this other room, and it's this long room with long tables of various tubs and jars and glass tubes and hundreds of crystals everywhere. So she grabs a yellow one, and once she does that, she hears a beep from her atlas, expecting Diego to be giving her a warning, and she's like, uh-oh, but it's just Lance O'Ryan again. And he says, maybe green this time? Although green as a nickname isn't quite so catchy. The suspense is killing me. She heads out the door, and as she's heading through the original lab door, it like swings open, and she manages to dive behind and catch it as he starts to walk into the lab, the professor that was sleeping outside. So as he's like walking down the aisles, she manages to like rush out behind him, and she gets to Diego, and she like slips and falls and just like comments about how terrible she is at these tasks. Like, this is Tory's thing. She's the clumsy one.
Yeah. We gotta get that twin distinction going.
Yeah, exactly. So Tory is back in her fire elemental class, and it's basically disastrous. We're back in Tory's head, and she's like trying to convince Professor Pyro that she has more control over her magic when she's not in the suit. Because in Professor Pyro's class, they make her wear these suits that help her control her power, but she's like, no, it's not helping. It's actually making things worse. But Pyro is like, no, that's nonsense. And also, Tory keeps getting docked these points for not practicing with Darius, even though Darius is the one not showing up to their liaison practices, but whatever. She kind of has this thought of asking Caleb to help, but she also feels like Caleb would just stand by Darius's decision to not help, and it's like not worth the embarrassment, and she also is still kind of mad at him, so whatever. But Tory has been actually practicing on her own in the fire arena. And so, like, this has been something that she's inviting Darcy to, so she can help Darcy, and Sophia and Diego are going to come. And so before they actually go to that, Tory decides to go for a run, and she runs into this, like, Nemean lion, realizing it's, like, stretching a legs out in its order form. It doesn't really matter. But she does hear a voice, and it says, you should pay more attention to your surroundings. And she sees Darius leaning against a tree. She does get the feeling that he's following her, because this is like the 4th time that he has been following her. And we also, as the readers, know he's following her because he told O'Ryan that. So
like a lot.
A
to
lot.
the point where he's late for things.
Yeah.
Which is sus.
Right? So nothing comes out of it at all. Like, she just ends up heading into the orb. She kind of ignores him. And she's listening to music. She runs into a hard body in the orb. It's O'Ryan. He makes a comment about Blue being the clumsy one, and she's like, well, I'm trying to mix it up. But she does notice the red Leo symbol on Orion's arm. And she says, isn't Darius a Leo? And Orion's like, why are you interested? And she's like, you guys have matching best friend forever tattoos. I thought that was a bit strange. And that was like the absolute end of this interaction. We're just kind of learning now, what does everybody know? Like,
yeah.
Tory and Darcy are starting to make some connections. But she actually finds the Ass crew, and Darcy, Sophia, and Diego sit down to eat. Geraldine did overhear Tory asking O'Ryan about the tattoo, and Geraldine just, like, full loyalty, just started following O'Ryan to see, like, if she could figure it out. But she actually has some information. She knows what this is. And she tells Tory and Darcy and Sophia and Diego that O'Ryan and Darius have what they call a guardian bond. And we get a little lore dump about what a guardian bond is. A guardian bond is an ancient piece of magic which links 2 souls together. In generations past, members of Jerry's family were actually selected to be guardians for the members of the Vega's royal family. Now, the magic is used to fuse 2 people together by linking their souls. Its whole purpose is to protect the life of an important person. They're called the Ward, and in this case, that's Darius. And they make sure that the guardian, who is O'Ryan in this situation, will always place themselves in between danger and the Ward if the Ward comes under attack. So that's kind of the rules. It is also said that guardians can actually feel the pain of their wards if they are injured, and they would give every last drop of their magic to protect and heal them, basically meaning they would die for them if it was necessary. Now, is an outdated practice now. Laws were put into place to stop allowing powerful families to force other Fae into being a guardian. This can now only be done by volunteer.
But, like, who's governing that?
Who's governing that? Like, we don't know really at this point. Is Orion being forced into it illegally, or did Orion volunteer?
Yeah.
Most likely forced.
How are we gonna define volunteer? Because, like, if the choice is death or theoretically you volunteered.
Yeah. And we know that only death can release this bond. You can't break it otherwise. The heirs walk into the orb, and Tory admires how Caleb looks, and they come over to the table. Max immediately threatens them by telling them once again to leave before things escalate. Tory's kind of like, what do you define escalate at this point?
Yeah, how did we get further from attempted murder? Murder?
Max tries to use his magic on Tory to tell him more of her fears from the car accident, and she shoves her entire will into fighting off the coercion and snaps out of, or not the coercion, like the siren magic, and she snaps out of it, punching him straight in the throat. So she resisted his power, and all of the heirs are like, oh shit.
Yeah, because it wasn't coercion she resisted, it was his actual magic.
Yeah. So they all look really surprised, and he calls her a crazy bitch, and she's like, yup.
This is accurate.
And then he throws water at her, and then she unleashes fire in her hands, and the two elements collide and cancel each other out. But she still knows that she's outmatched here. Like, she can hold her own, but she needs to get out of this. So as she's winding up another blow, she's like, you know what? Might not have magic, but I know how to street fight. And she kicks him straight in the balls.
As she should.
And then she leans over and whispers to him, and she goes, I would think long and hard about trying to pull any more secrets from my lips, because some of the ones I'm keeping aren't my own. And as a finale, she sends a wave of air crashing towards him, and she walks out with the rest of her crew. So, I don't know, she's getting stronger.
They're finally figuring it out.
They're figuring it out.
They're figuring out how to acclimate to their new home.
Yeah. As they're walking away, Caleb approaches asking if he can have a word, calling her sweetheart. And she goes with him to ask what he wants. And I just feel like we do this so much where Caleb just wants to talk and it doesn't go anywhere. But we're going to try it again. He says he wants to kiss her. He also tells her she's a badass for sucker punching Max. But he also wants to know if she'll tell him Max's secret because he has vampire ear hearing. She's like, oh, he also likes Pegasus ass. And he's like, I'll coerce you. And he also seems to know, like, she's been song spelled. He understands that this is a piece of magic, and he's like, oh, I know exactly what happened. And he knows that they had to make out. And he's jealous. He's like, who was better? Who, blah, blah, blah. So he kind of, like, tries to push, like, let's kiss. And Tori's like, yeah, I have better things to do tonight. And she walks away. But in the meantime, while they were gone, Darcy stole his bag for a second and grabbed the atlas. And she joined a bunch of Pegasus appreciation groups on Facebook and sent some suggested messages to some Pegasus girls on campus through Caleb's atlas. And Sophia's there. Like,
yeah,
she's just like, that has to be offensive to her.
You would think. Yeah.
But whatever, who am I?
Unless they, like, got her to play along, I guess?
I think they did, but it's just like, they're actively making fun of her order. I don't know. Nobody takes things personally here. So Tory heads back to her room later in the night, and she was listening to music from a playlist on her atlas. She starts going through all of her new clothes, and she's waiting for Sophia to have, like, a little study group, and she's thinking about how Darcy seems to think that she has a shopping addiction, which she totally does. She's going through, like, lace, panties, and bras. And she hears a knock at the door, and so she's like, oh, Sophie, you're just in time. Diego would go nuts for you in this, holding up, like, a bra. And as she turns around, she actually sees Darius instead. So she immediately stops dancing, and she throws the bra back in the box, and they exchange some, like, banter. She asks him what he wants. He says that he has an invitation for Tory and Darcy to come to a party at his family's house to meet the Celestial Council. She's like, nope. He goes, you don't have a choice. It's next Saturday night. I'll come by and get you at 6. Wear something nice. She's like, no, that time's not going to work for me. I can't make it happen. Sorry. And he tosses the invitation to the floor and leaves for like, I don't know, 6 seconds before storming back in. And now he's super pissed off. So she like ignores him for another exactly 5 seconds. That was noted. And he sends like this torrent of water over her. And he gets really close and he says, you're walking on thin ice, Roxy. If you keep pushing me, you're seriously going to regret it. And she tells him if he wants her to come, he's going to drag her kicking and screaming. She doesn't give a fuck what his parents think. And, like, she's pretty sure that he can't kill her at this point. Otherwise, like, he would just do it. So, like, what does he have to be afraid of here? So he's like, yeah, I'm not going to kill you. But, like, what would it take you to cooperate? And she's like, no, you're not understanding. I say no. And he's like, well, how about a trade? And he says that he will tutor her like he said he would. As if that's like this huge favor. Like, oh, I guess I will
do the thing I committed to.
Yeah, whatever. So he says that, and that he'll be nice to her. What a nice thing.
Which is already a thing he's supposed to do.
If she goes to the party. So those are his 2 commitments. And she kind of starts to immediately realize, like, oh, he needs this for some reason. And she wants to know why. So she tries to guess, like, oh, you really want to impress your parents? And he just kind of sloughs it off, and she's like, okay, that's not it. She's like, wait, you really are scared of disappointing them. And then he got angry. So she knows, once again, we know that when men get angry, we've stricken a chord. So she finally agrees that, okay, he really needs to, like, not disappoint them. And she's like, well, if they're anything like you, I don't blame you. They sound like a bunch of assholes.
If they raised you.
Yeah. And he gets angry about that because people talking about his family apparently just really sets him off. So she finally agrees that if he meets her at the fire arena the next day and can stick to his word, then she'll go to the stupid party and dress up. And he goes, great, I'll send dresses over. Back to Darcy, back to her hair plot. She's about to test her hair situation out. The liquid she brewed turned her clear, her transparent clearness like it was supposed to, and she uses her star chart and her aster to angle herself towards the North Star. She tips it into her mouth and soon after felt hair growing into her palm on her head, and it was down to her shoulders. It finished growing just like a little bit longer than it was before, obviously not blue. She reads her horoscope again. Quickly to summarize, this is also Saturday. So I think just like this, she has detention and everything.
When we're done all of this, we should make a timeline of how long this whole series actually takes.
Dude, it's probably like 3 months.
Because like it, yeah.
And we're in like 2 weeks into the school right now.
Yeah, like they're like at it's just
I think
2
it's
weeks.
3.
Maybe?
I think the first book was
a week and a half.
2 weeks. Yeah, a little bit.
This is week 3.
Yeah. Horoscope summary. A, she's going to be at the mercy of a Libra. But that's okay because all Libras are apparently very just. And we also know that Orion is a Libra and she has detention with Orion coming up. So that checks out. Also, Mercury will be in retrograde in the coming weeks, which I, who don't know a lot about astrology, don't really know what that means, but apparently it's chaotic. And also says that her actions will decide what happens, which seems
self-explanatory.
She doesn't have much longer before she has to meet Orion for detention. So she goes outside. She's like mesmerized by the harpies that are in the sky because her mother had belonged to the order, which also makes it think how cool it would be to be a harpy and how uncool it would be to be a hydra, which is her dad's. But she does head to the orb to grab breakfast, and as she's walking with her breakfast and coffee, she does accidentally spill a little bit on the heir's beloved red couch. So she was kind of going to grab some napkins, but then as she was, like, heading over there, the heirs walked in quickly, so she was like, sit down at a table, and Darius immediately notices the poor stain. So she's just, like, kind of watching this, like, these 3 boys have a meltdown over a stain on the couch. And Darcy is, like, just observing, and all of a sudden she hears a whisper in her ear. It was very seductive. I thought your sister was the one joining us in detention. And it was Caleb, and his lips, like, brush her neck. he's not realizing that it's not Darcy
Oh,
because Darcy's
yeah.
hair is not blue and they're identical twins. So he thinks it's Tory. So Darcy's like, and Caleb's like, what, is this a joke? And then Seth bursts in to go to Darcy because he realizes, like, oh my God, Darcy's hair is back. And he's like, who helps you? And she's like, I can read a library book. Thanks.
Yeah, I can do research.
Which
She
is
can't, but...
not true. So the rest of the heirs now notice what's going on, and they come over to blame Darcy for the coffee stain. They get into this bickering session about who owns the couch and who should apologize and why Darcy got detention. And if she got detention because she's trying to fuck Orion. It's like this whole thing. Darius does defend Orion, saying he's not he wouldn't lay a hand on a student, but he does get defensive about being friends when prompted. So Orion comes in and he's like, no, we're not friends, especially because you just left me waiting in Jupiter Hall. They're late to detention. And he adds 2 extra hours to their detention for the day, because apparently Orion picked today of all days to be on time for something. So he brings them out to the Wailing Wood and explains that for the first half of their detention, they will be spending digging an 8-foot deep hole in the meadow as a team. Orion does give Darcy some magic that's going to prevent her from chafing, and as she turns around to start digging, she's hit with a clump of dirt that was thrown by a shovel from Seth, who is awarded with 50 push-ups. Then Orion brings her over to like give her water in the middle of it, and he gets like accused of favoritism by the rest of the heirs. And it is favoritism. That is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, he wants to fuck her.
So he tells Darcy during this time that he has a problem. Right after he soaks the boys in water so it's no longer favoritism, he has a problem. He can't tell Darcy apart from Tory. So he gives her until sundown to tell her if she's going to go with blue or green. And internally she's like, yeah, no, I don't owe you that. And she goes to grab a shovel. The boys get it first. They toss it around like children. They earn 450 more push-ups, but this time for Darius. And she tries to ignore Caleb's muscles. I'm not sure who's attracted to who yet at this point. Everybody...
They're all hot. And they're 18.
Yeah. So she starts digging, and she throws some dirt over her shoulder. She hits Caleb. It's kind of like rocky start. But eventually, they do kind of start to find some common ground. And of all things, it's Washer that does it. So apparently, Washer has a porn addiction. And
Shocker.
Yeah. And so they all kind of like start making fun of how he's a creep. And whatever. They kind of start giggling, at least. It's nice. By midday, they have their hole dug, and Orion calls him up to like this large lifeguard type chair he's going on, because he wants to like prove that they have the magic to get up there with him. So all 3 of them do, and like Darcy barely does. But she finally is able to like shoot herself off the ground, and when she does so, she does it way too fast and way too far. So she crashes into Seth, and everybody's like wet, and it's gross. And that just happens. Orion makes fun of all of them for also not being able to dry themselves because they haven't learned that yet. And he takes them up to Jupiter Hall, and they go up to the very top floor where there's a roof and a hatch. As they're climbing the ladder, though, he like brushes Darcy's hip, which she feels everywhere. But he uses magic to dry her off, and she just says thanks. They arrive up the roof, and it is a mess up there. It's disgusting. And Orion shares that a griffin went up there, drunk and in order form, and he had eaten something that really didn't agree with him. And Darcy realizes that the mess that they're looking at is griffin poop. There's probably too much lore on griffin poop, but I'm going to tell you all of it.
It just all hit me at once, and I was like, yeah, it's toxic.
So griffin poop dries hard as rock and can give you a burning, blotchy purple rash for days if you get it on your skin. It also turns out that as they're like getting clumps of the hard, dried poop off of it, it's like smells like rotten cabbage, and it's a whole thing. So they start picking away at it, and Darcy thinks about how it could be a great prank on Max, because Max has sensitive skin.
Yeah, he's a sensitive boy.
He really doesn't want to get the griffin poop on his skin because he'll react worse than others. And she's like, keeping that one in mind. Darius, though, is like noticeably slacking during this. He's sitting on the edge of the roof with Orion chatting and laughing and earning some glares, rightful glares, from the other heirs. So they finally press Darcy again, the three of them, to figure out what she got detention for. And for some reason, she just decides to be trusting in this scenario. And she reveals that it's because she tried to steal Stardust from Orion's office because she wanted to go home. And they immediately get intrigued. They were like, "You are that close. Let's see if we can make this happen." And so they start screaming at Orion to see if they can hear him and like trying to get his attention. And when Orion doesn't notice, they start like to go forward. Almost 2 seconds in, they're immediately thrown up in the air. Orion has like noticed and he put them up in the air and he accuses them. Apparently, they put a silencing spell on them so that Orion couldn't hear him. He tries to like embarrass them by making them all fall from above, but all three of them just figure out a way to gracefully go down. Like Caleb summons Earth so that he can step down and that kind of thing, and he doesn't get any of them.
No splat.
Yeah. And Orion kind of to Darcy is like, "Damn it, I was kind of hoping to get one of them." Darcy's like, "Why try? They're untouchable." And Orion says that they aren't. You just have to find the right buttons to push. And asks again if it's green or blue. Chapter 14, we're going to do, this is our last chapter that we're going to do for today. Tory is going for a run. She's trying to PR her 10-kilometer run, and she's heading towards the fire arena to meet Darius, hopefully. We're thinking he's going to be kind today, hopefully. He promised, and he promised to meet her, so we don't... But she does finish her 10K with a 17-second personal record, so we're proud of her for that. And Caleb comes up beside her. Tori's like, "Are you here to bite me?" And she basically says that he's been using the heirs for blood lately. And he says that that is like his punishment for not stopping what happened. And she was like, "Shouldn't I be the one who's punishing you?" And he was like, "I might like that."
You could be.
And they continue to flirt for a little bit before she leaves to the fire arena. And surprisingly, Darius is already there. And Darius during the situation is actually kind of helpful. While he's like explaining tips, he kind of explains that concentrating on her well of power as if it's a pool inside of her chest helps. And what he's going to do is he's going to push his magic to join with her, and it's going to help her like learn how to control it. So as he's trying to push, it like doesn't work. And he goes, "Hey, you need to trust me." And she's like, "Okay, we have a problem then."
Yeah, that's not happening.
Don't. And he's like trying to force his way in, and he's like, "Stop fighting me." And she's like, "Again, not gonna freaking happen." And they go back and forth. But he starts to explain that power sharing is actually one of the most natural things in the world when you trust someone. But it's also intimate. It is strange at the beginning, especially when you're not comfortable. So finally, she kind of just allows herself to do it, and they get there. And his power rushes through her. Her muscles tense and her back arches involuntarily. And she notes that when Professor Pyro did this to her in like the original classes, it did not feel like this. It was, and she describes it as having a living beast crawling beneath her skin and nuzzling against her own inner creature. So she starts to look up at him in awe, and she's like, "Is this supposed to feel like this?" And he seems to like just be as speechless for a second, and then he kind of snaps out of it. And he explains that it's just because they're both so powerful, it's nothing to be concerned about. They do make some progress though. So Tory is able to conjure some fireballs. She's able to change some shapes and sizes. And Darius pauses for a second and asks kind of tiredly if her power is waning. And he's like, "Are you done yet?" She says, "I'm good. No problem. I can keep going." And he's like, "You can just admit it if you're tired." And she's like, "No, I actually feel really great right now." And then he's forced to admit that his power is waning and he needs a top up. And he also is like, "Yeah, but giving magic and like lending is so much harder."
Yeah, so difficult.
So it's way more exhausting than wielding it. So it makes sense that I'm tired. So then they sit down and he kind of like tells her he got more gold from home. Tory, being really nosy, wants to know how he managed to leave a flame so close to his clothes. Because she kind of wants to know, like, what do you know about the situation? And he replies, his reply is, it was actually my curling iron too close to my bondage gear. And they kind of start laughing.
Yeah.
They start laughing together. So finally Darius's magic is ready again, and he tells her that she's ready to conjure something a little bit more powerful. And this is when things kind of get a little bit weird. So he wants her to think of something that she knows better than her own face, create it with fire. So he puts his hands on her waist to help her control, which sends electricity through her body, and all she can focus on is him touching her. She does refocus eventually, and she conjures a motorbike. He was kind of confused. He goes, can you ride one of those? And she goes, oh yeah, if you want to get rid of me, just give me that in an open road, and I'm gone. Easy peasy. So she kind of like flies it through the air, and it ends up falling out of the sky. She loses focus, and Darius provides her feedback. You gotta stay focused. So now she's like, well, I just need something bigger. And now she conjures a massive falcon, and she starts to shift her hips back. And now we're like getting inappropriate.
Yeah.
She's like, this is kind of like a weird sex thing, I think. So he's like touching her more promiscuously. And now she has a second falcon in the air, and he's like getting a little stiff behind. The whole thing is super crazy. They get really close to kissing, like with all the tension, and she looks up to him, and she just says his name. She goes, Darius. And he just looks at her, and they get closer, and then she shoves him away, and she goes, don't flatter yourself, and walks away. And as she's walking away, he calls that he'll come get her and her sister from Tory's room at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Dresses will be delivered morning of.
Do we think Darius has bomb taste in dresses?
Absolutely, he does.
He gives
I
gift my woman exceptional dresses vibes.
I wouldn't give Seth or Max that responsibility.
No. Seth would dress you in something absurdly slutty.
Yes.
Just, it would be 2 straps.
Yeah, it would be nothing.
Max just doesn't understand.
No.
At all. He'd be so confused. Caleb would also be very good.
He would be. That's part 1 of Zodiac Academy number 2, Ruthless Fae. There's a plot somewhere in there, I swear.
We made no progress. Like, it's
0 progress. It's been like 4 days.
If you assume that the plot overarchingly is the nymphs and that problem, which is clearly at the school.
And some sort of mysterious death with her parents and the political turmoil with the heirs.
Yeah. We took like half an inch forward on that.
But we did make a lot of progress with Darcy's hair.
Darcy's hair situation is like 98% solved.
Well, there's still the color situation, which seems to be
80% solved. She has hair.
She has hair.
She now needs to figure out if she's going to dye to color.
That took half a book.
Yeah.
And we'll see if it did. I haven't read the other half of this book yet.
Yeah, you haven't gone forward. Mm-mm. Which I think is really funny because the literal next chapter explains the Elysian thing. And I was like, are we getting here? Are we not getting here?
We were not getting there.
Okay, we can figure out more about our celestial bonds later, I guess.
Can't wait.
Yeah. I can't remember what else happened, to be honest.
Great. It's been a while for you.
Yeah, I just know I get my hairline is coming up fairly soon.
Okay. In this book?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what else happens in this book, I'll be honest. I have no idea. This has all been really intriguing for me. I was really into it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to part 2.1, book 2.1.
Yep.
Please give us a like, a subscribe, a follow. Means the world to us. And thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.